And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right, everybody. Good morning. 8:05 live Eastern Time, and of course, 4:05 in the 49th state of Alaska. It's a little cool this morning, if you can see what I'm talking about here. We got a great topic for you. So I look at this topic and I say to myself, it's kind of like a two-part story now. So if John, Marlon, and Rob, if you agree. So the first part of the story is there's a man, it's kind of like a myth legend, right? There's a man who supposedly is a billionaire who has all kinds of connections to royalty, presidents, brokers, and supposedly is a pedophile. But now there's nothing to see, because now the story is, I think part two is, now the story is apparently it's just there's a man who was in a 24-hour holding cell who never did anything wrong, because there's nothing to see here, but took his own life when there was 24-hour watch, 24-hour security. Apparently the cameras weren't working, or maybe the security was napping. So this is like a two-part story. And so now the story is just about a man that we should pretty much say, hey, I'm sorry, but you were accused of something you didn't do. What are your thoughts? John, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, the Epstein thing for me really wasn't like a huge thing. I didn't follow it too much. I just figured, hey, there's a bunch of sex traffickers, they'll lock up all the people that were involved in it, and we'll find out in time. And, and I know like any issue that highlights in the media, there's a ton of conspiracy theories around it, right? But two guys in particular, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, made their careers off of talking about Jeffrey Epstein, their sources, their intel. It was a constant push of, leading their audience on, like, oh, I spoke to my sources here. The Epstein client list. We're going to get the flight logs. We're going to get this. And to me, like, I never really listened to Dan Bongino much, because it always felt like it was kind of like a hook and dragging you along. And so, but it became a big thing in like the MAGA crowd, right? And I consider myself part of that crowd, but it just wasn't a big thing for me. And I'm like, and now watching the 180 that the Trump administration has pulled, and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, it just makes me question, like, to me, it's like it's like simple. It's like either Dan Bongino and Kash Patel were completely full of garbage, and they were just stringing their audience along, and they really had nothing. And they got in there, and now the gig's up, and it's like, we're not going to admit that we were full of crap, but, we're not going to admit that we wrote books, we did this, we talked about the deep state, we talked about getting rid of all the people in the FBI, and it was all just gaslighting, or they're lying. Like, I don't see it any other way, like, I don't see, like, I don't, I heard somebody's take, I think it was like Patrick Bet-David or somebody, pretty big guy, has a lot of big following, and he's like, oh, I think that they do have the client list, and Trump's just using it to blackmail the deep state. And I'm like, do you feel comfortable like actually saying that to people? Because like I don't think anybody's that stupid to believe that. And then now, like, watching the Benny Johnsons and the Trump and the DC Dranos and all of these people that really did the same thing as Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, now pretending to be outraged by it. It just makes me think, like, I think this is all political theater. I'm starting to lose trust in literally everybody. I'm literally starting to lose trust in all of mainstream media, the independent media, and I don't know how anybody else isn't.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everyone. Morning, chat. Hope everyone's doing well today. Yeah, this is this topic is one hell of a rabbit hole, the more you look into it. But it's very disappointing that guys like Kash and Dan Bongino, who did in fact build a career off of this stuff, you would think if you build a career off of something, the minute you get into power, that would be one of your first priorities, again, because you built a career out of it. But like I said on Monday, these guys kept on talking about it, even when it it had pretty much died out in the public discourse, because the public had already, we already figured we weren't getting anything out of the Biden administration, but these guys kept on talking about it, and they made it a career, and they brought it back into public limelight, and now they're in power. They're telling us to shut up and stop asking questions, which is, it's like completely bizarre. But I think one of the things people are going to realize as this plays out, because it's far from over, and the frustration that you saw with Trump about 2 days ago when they asked him, and actually it's more than 2 days now, it's maybe 3 days, when they asked him the question, and he responded to them basically, why are you still asking this? And then Bondi had to keep on talking about it. Well, this is far from over, because we're still talking about it, which means that you're going to see more frustration grow within the administration, and you're going to see more attempts to distract us and get us off that topic. So I think there's more to come on this.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone in the chat. I totally agree. It's kind of weird that, you would think you're going to prosecute somebody. So you have this list, and then all of a sudden the list disappears off the desk after we've been told on and on and on again that if I get in this position, we're going to show you the list, we're going to supply you with it. So I say, what's really on that list? Is Obama on it? Is Biden on it? Is Trump on it? And is there a deal behind closed doors to say, hey, let's not release the list. The list never existed. Is it a complete and total cover up over everything? I mean, you look at the Kennedy shooting, right? It's only till this year where we start finding out exactly how much really people were involved in this. So I don't know, it could be years from now before we actually really find out, when somebody finally puts this list forward, if it even exists, if it hasn't been, put in the shredder and is gone. And John, you're right. There's a guy that went to jail, allegedly, killed himself while the cameras were off. And then even Bongino and them are saying, no, we reviewed everything. It was definitely a suicide. Really? All right. That goes back to the NYPD, right? The guy shot 2 times in the head, and they go, it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Yeah. Oh, all right. We got you, So I think there's a complete cover up, and I think and like, you're right, Marlon. Why did Trump get pissed off? Because I saw the flight logs, right? Trump's on there. I'm not accusing him, but there's names on there that you see, and his name isn't one of them. So I was on the plane. All right, well, Epstein's plane had a lot of people on it, and they were going to specific places with specific women on that thing. So I don't know. The whole thing stinks, man.
So I think this is interesting, right? We talk about Kash, Patel, and we talk about Dan Bongino. And it's interesting that both of them had the same insight before being the positions they are, and they're both in positions supporting each other, right? We got the director and the deputy director for the FBI work together that had the same theories. And then the spinoff to that, completely independent from each other, is Pam Bondi. So Pam Bondi, especially with her experience, right? She comes from Florida. And in February of 2025, she gets appointed. And when she gets appointed, she goes on Fox News and she says, I'm going to release the client files that I have, and they're sitting on my desk. That was February of 2025. That's only a few months ago. And we see a complete 180 in a few months. Now, they were independent from each other then, but now it appears they're no longer independent from each other and working together. So you have to ask yourself, the question is, are they lying or is someone else lying? What's the truth in this? And that's what you have to ask yourself. Who do you trust? Do you trust Dan Bongino and Kash Patel before? Do you trust them now? Do you trust Pam Bondi before? Do you trust them now? And what's interesting about that, if you believe they're lying, it's even worse, because if we believe that the 3 of these people who have powerful positions in this country, directing and the deputy director for FBI, and Pam Bondi, your attorney general, we have some even bigger problems. Because if we can't trust them, how can we trust them to support a justice system? This is a major problem on both ends. And we see some infighting in the MAGA movement because of this. So this whole thing is coming full circle. I think it's a huge problem. So do we either owe him an apology? You know, do we owe Maxime an apology? It's a lot of questions here. Let's go forward with the video, John.
Yeah, you know, I totally, like, I'm easier to believe that they just gaslit everybody for 3-4 years, and like I'm easier to believe that. I actually would rather believe that. I'd rather believe that they were just all lying. It's a much more comfortable belief for me to think, okay, yeah, Dan Bongino's a media personality. Kash Patel was building himself as a media personality, and they just lied to you. But however you whack it up, they lost all credibility because either they were lying then or they're lying now, right? Like there's no if, and, or but about that. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's no, you know, and I love all the, oh, well, I trust Dan totally. All right, well, you're an idiot. You know, I trust Trump totally. All right, well, you're an idiot. Like, you know, like I don't trust anybody totally. I don't even trust myself totally. I have to know where I am at that moment in time and what I'm doing. You know, I don't put myself in situations because I don't trust myself. You know what I mean? Like, so let's just watch a few minutes of this. This is a long video, but Marlon, before you go, let's just play a few minutes of this. Like this is just like a roundup of everything. This came out from Kyle Seraphin. He put this video out.
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that.
Flashback. Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI. That's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
The Senate has confirmed Kash Patel as the new director of the FBI. He was another controversial choice.
That's why you don't have a Black Book.
That Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. I'm just going to throw this out there, Armacost. You think that would be valuable to an intelligence apparatus to have blackmail material on people on video, doing things with young women they shouldn't be doing in case you need a, let's say, favor later? Hey, it'd be a real shame if this got out, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Dan, I think that'd be very helpful. Yes.
I think, yeah, maybe. We need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it.
Newly sworn-in FBI Director Kash Patel named popular podcaster Dan Bongino as the deputy director of the agency.
The Black Book, it's not just sitting. I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the Black Book. And not just that. On day one, roll out all of the text messaging communications we were told were deleted. They overclassify 50% of the stuff there to protect the deep state. Oh, no, you can't see that. Nothing to see here.
You know, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that. That he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset.
I want to talk to you about the Epstein case. I have worked on this for years, trying to get those records of who flew on Epstein's plane and who helped him build this international human trafficking, sex trafficking ring. Now, earlier, I urged then Chairman Durbin to subpoena those records, and I ended up being blocked by Senator Durbin and Christopher Wray. They stonewalled on this. And I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
Evidence from...
Enough of that. But I could watch that all day, dude. Maul, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I tend to think that I think a lot of these guys are compromised, but I also tend to think that they once they got into those administrative offices, they realized how much bigger that certain billionaire with an island in the Caribbean is to a lot of things, and he was connected to a lot of people, connected to a lot of governments, connected to a lot of people involved in industries and Wall Street. And the problem is, as Andrew Tate put up a video a couple days ago, where he said that if you're a president and you're trying to get things done, you need these elites and you need these heads of industry. And basically, he alluded to Trump making a deal with him. So what I think is that these guys, once they got into those roles and they see how deep it is, how deep the well is, they essentially have to make a choice here, and what we're seeing is that choice being made by them, that they have to protect the president's agenda. And so I think, they're compromised, but I don't think it's compromised in the way we think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Marlon. There is something there behind closed doors, some deals made, because there's names on there that they don't want to get out. I'm going to accuse. I'm going to say something, and I'm not saying I have any facts to it. But what if Kash and Don Bongino were on that list, and they were like, "Oh man, look, we're on this list too. There's no way this can get out." So you never know who's on that list. There's tons of people on there. Are there back deals being made? Absolutely. Hey, don't do this, and then we won't do that. And that's what politics is, right? We don't know half the stuff that goes on behind closed doors, and the deals that are made. Look at the bills, right? I don't go down a whole nother rabbit hole, but those bills are filled. John, you speak about it all the time, a one-page bill. Hey, well, these bills are filled with all this other, BS, so that these people get their kickbacks. And who knows what's going on with this list. And for Pam Bondi, who you would think you would kind of trust and everything else, says, I have the list on my desk, and then all of a sudden it disappears. I don't know, it sounds like the whole thing case has disappeared, because a poor guy, was in my opinion, killed in the jail, and now his wife is still in jail on what? Based on what? There's things that are going on behind closed doors. There's definitely deals going down. I mean, this has huge corruption, in my opinion.
Well, I think so. What's important to note about this case, and I think it's the age-old question that we've been asking, is who really runs this country? Is it politics? Is it power? And I think what that comes down to is power, and who really holds the power. It's the elites, right? Because prior to Kash Patel becoming the FBI director, he said that the Epstein files were under direct control. And then somehow he even named, if you remember, I think it was December 2023, around there, where he names Bill Gates as blocking it. So he named some high prolific figures. So it's interesting to look at this. There's a lot of layers to peel back, and you can ask yourself, it's quite interesting. And I think this kind of alludes to what you're saying, Marlon, if I'm right. If not, you could correct me. But what I think you're saying, and I kind of agree with you if this is what you're saying, that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, if they were right and they weren't lying, let's say they're right, it would make sense to put them in these high prolific positions and say, hey, you're the FBI director, you're the deputy FBI director, congratulations. These elites just want you to keep your mouth shut and put a seal on this stuff, because if we open up this can of worms from the inside, look what comes out of it, right? There's a lot of powerful people that can be burned here, and you could be burned too. So I think that I'm not sure if that's completely what you're saying, Marlon, but I think that's what could be part of it, because you can say to yourself, what are the chances that these two guys are saying the same thing and they both end up working together? So I do think that there's a lot of big names behind this. So there's a lot of questions. But if they are lying, it's scary of the position that they're in. Either way, it's a huge disaster. And it's not just about a man who's a pedophile. It really exposes the bigger picture of what's going on here and who really runs this country. And I mentioned the movie before, and it reminds me of that movie with George Clooney and Matt Damon. I think it was called Sahara, and it takes place in with the Saudis. And what you learn in that movie is that it's the powerful gas, the powerful oil companies were able to utilize their power to have which brother in, I think it was in Saudi Arabia,
Yes.
or Syria, I think, right? Of who's going to be put in power. What's that?
Mhm. You're talking about the House of Saud and how the British put them in charge?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And you see that
British Petroleum.
Exactly. The oil company petroleum are actually the ones that run the politics in the Middle East. And they put in who in power is going to make the money. So is that the same thing that's happened in this country? It could be. Either way, it's scary either way. I mean, deep state, not deep state, who runs the country? Those are my questions.
You know, I like, to me though, like that whole, like what Marlon's alluding to is like, oh, they got in and the swamp's much deeper and it could have national implications. So if you're telling me that exposing an international pedophile, child pedophile sex trafficking ring is going to have national implications, let it have national implications and burn this mother effer down. That's what I'm telling right now. Like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, if they're in that position, if everything they said was true prior and they got in and now they're afraid, they're cowards and they're treasonous. They should get hung. That's it. End of story. Like I don't have any time for this anymore. Like I'm 40. I'm going to be 45. You know, we talk about, you know, we celebrate the July 4th. We celebrate Memorial Day. We talk about honoring this country. I've seen post after post about defending this nation, about the oath they swore before God, you know. And when I look at the Constitution of the United States of America, you know, the thing that always gets missed in it is what those men pledged, right? What did they pledge? Those 56 guys that signed that document, what did they pledge? They pledged their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor, right? To uphold that document, to uphold this country, to lead this country down its best path. And if you get in there and it's too big and it's too scary, you're not the one, bro. Step down, or else you're going to be a treasonous. You're covering up for child sex traffickers. You're the worst of the worst. And that, again, explains to me the Bible verse, why cowards go first in the lake of fire, before the murderers, before the rapists, before the idolaters. It's the cowards, because without cowards, none of this happens. So we're covering up and allowing a huge child sex trafficking ring and people that did horrible things to children to go on. And that's why I'm saying it's easier for me to believe that they just lied to us in the media. But either way, they have no credibility with me whatsoever.
Look at how when they were, before they got in their positions, how they were like, how adamant they were, how energetic they were. There's a list, you know, just don't let it go. And then remember that interview where they both sat there and said, no, there's nothing there. You know, they were so docile at that point. They were like, oh no, there's nothing there. We looked, and you couldn't even lie right there. That you could see right through them that this was total BS. And they were trying to be so calm about it as not to erase our suspicions. But it was a complete and utter lie. You could tell by their faces. It was just a complete cover up on their part. And then that's the real question: is why is the cover up? You know, what is the deep state so strong, so deep that this, you know, could have a great effect across the country? Yeah, it could. But like to your point, John, what is the cost of it? Poor children that are human trafficked and stuff. I mean, when do we cause the line? Like we've always said, you look at the floods in Texas, right? And the poor children that were swept away. When children are involved, our hearts expand 100 times. So I don't care if it takes down the country, we can rebuild it. But don't let our children suffer from this. This is terrible that they would allow this to even happen because of the furtherance of their own political careers and their futures. I mean, where does it end?
Well, here's the problem, I think, right? So, John, if you're right, right? Well, not that you're right, but if we want, it would be easier, and I agree with you, that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino just cocked up this Fugazi story just to get some national attention. If that's the case, right? If that's the case, think about this. You never want to be, I mean, most people, right, don't want to be considered like a conspiracy theorist, right? Because then you become like an Alex Jones type, right? You believe everything's a conspiracy. And what do people think about conspiracy theorists? Most people say they're radicals, they're nuts, they're insane. So if that's the case, if we think, because Dan Bongino brought up conspiracy theories about how Epstein, there's a big plot behind this. He didn't kill himself. There's a lot of questions. Let's look at the security apparatus they had, the cameras that day. There's missing time on it. So he brought up a lot of conspiracy theories. If it's just a conspiracy theorist, then bottom line is we now promoted Dan Bongino, who's a nut radical conspiracy theorist, to the deputy director of FBI. So either way, it's a freaking disaster. That's what I'm saying. This is a mess. That's what we're saying. Either way, if he's right, they're holding back, and that hurts the country, right? And really, who's in power? It's elite, powerful people that hold the cards. Or if he's wrong and he was just lying, we put a radical nut in the second highest position in the FBI and our justice system in this country. Either way, I think it's a complete disaster. Marlon, do you agree? I mean, if either way, we lose.
Yeah, so keep in mind, the word conspiracy was invented in the 1970s by the CIA. Okay, it was invented after the Warren Commission failed to quell public doubt about JFK's assassination. And also in that video that we saw, Glenn Beck mentioned Hoover in that. The Hoover that he was alluding to is J. Edgar Hoover, who ran the FBI for close to 50 years. And he basically had like files on everybody in DC. And what kept him there was because he had blackmail info on everybody in DC, and he himself was also being blackmailed by the CIA because they knew that, he had certain he did certain things, let's just say, certain sexual related things. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make here is that is again, they don't want us talking about this. And there is that I actually believe I actually kind of understand now why Bongino and Kash Patel are doing this. And I'm glad I'm not in their position, because I couldn't go to sleep at night knowing that I'm not helping to end this issue and to solve this problem that we have. But you when you look at all the things this billionaire was invested in, again, I say a lot of them are connected to the money. And when you have billionaires, multiple billionaires with a lot of money to lose, the desperation comes into play. And considering what happened to JFK, you have to think that some of that weighs on their mind as well. That if you don't play ball with them, that these guys will be so desperate that they're going to do things that you're not going to like. So I think that plays a very strong part in what they're doing.
So then they're cowards, and they don't pledge their life, their fortune, or their sacred honor. They're full of crap. They don't deserve to be in the positions that they're going to be in. I'm sorry, if you're a cop and you're worried about, oh my God, they're going to come after me, they're going to come after my family, turn your badge in. Now you're in charge of the nation's the number one law enforcement agency in the world, and you're worried about your own safety and the safety of your family. I'm not saying you shouldn't be worried about it, but if you're not going to go ahead and do what needs to be done, you have no business being where you go back to podcasting and see you later. It's not that this job ain't for you, brother. That's it. Like, listen, I don't skydive. I'm afraid of heights. I'm not going to sit there and pretend like I'm a skydiver. I'm not. My father was a paratrooper. He jumped out of planes into the jungle of Vietnam. I'm not him, bro. That dude was that. I'm not him. I don't have that type of testosterone. I don't have that type of my nutsack isn't as big as his, and I'm not gonna 1 second pretend that I'm him. But like, I'm not gonna go out there and say, "Oh, John, do you want to lead all the paratroopers?" And we'll dump you guys wherever. We'll drop 6 of you off, and as a ranger, and I'll drop 6 of you off, and anywhere in the world at any time. And you guys have this mission, and you got 2 weeks to come back. They tell me that, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not doing that. I got 2 kids. I got a wife. I'm this. I'm that. I'm not that guy, bro. But this is what like. I don't care if that's what it is. I really don't care. I don't care if there's all these billionaires. I don't care who it is. I mean, look at what Rudy Giuliani did to take down the mafia in New York City at the time he did it. Jim Walden too was involved in those prosecutions. What those guys did was risk their life, dude. They put their family's life at risk. They went up against people that controlled New York City through murder. That's how they controlled New York City. That's how they got all the contracts. That's how they swayed politicians, judges, and the cops to not do anything to them through murder. And they went and they took that system head on and they won. And so like there's a couple of things here, right? One, I notice a huge shift in Pam Bondi, right? Where every MAGA influencer is pushing for her head, which tells me that she's out. So if she winds up being out, in my opinion, then everything they said was legit, and now they're lying to us, and they're scapegoating Pam Bondi, right? And then my other thing is, and we spoke about this last week, what is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail for? Did she only traffic children to Jeffrey Epstein? Or what? Or was that all a big lie too? And we don't know anything about it. So we're sitting here and we're talking about all this, and all of this is speculation, by the way, right? Even everything the mainstream media has, because we don't know the facts around the case, because everything's confidential and everything's secret. And and people could say whatever. You're a conspiracy theorist. Okay. Then I'll lead. I'm okay if I'm a conspiracy theorist. I just trust what the FBI director and his deputy director told me for 3 years. So I guess you appointed conspiracy theorists to lead the nation's largest police department. Not largest, but a number one police agency. So I don't know. Weird, bro.
Like, here's the problem. And the problem is this. The problem is that either way, there is a lie. Is the lie before they were appointed as FBI director and deputy director of FBI, or is the lie now? One way or the other, there's a lie in there. And I agree with you, John. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I spent my time, my young years in the Marine Corps. I spent the majority of my life in the police department. Being coined as the most complained cop, my life was on the line many times. I was getting death threats. I got notified from the police department numerous times. I was getting death threats, and they asked if I needed threat assessment. I said, no, absolutely not. I made sure I took care of my family. I did what I had to do to make sure they're safe. Absolutely not. My job was to keep the public safe. And if that means I put myself in harm's way, so be it. That's part of it. And especially that you're part of the strongest police force in the entire country. And that is the FBI, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the entire world, next to the Israeli Defense Force, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the entire country. And if you're safe, and if you're going to compromise your integrity for your safety, we got some major problems here. We got some major problems. Yes. Are you in the limelight? Are you a high-profile figure? I mean, I would assume that they knew that. They knew what they were barking before they got appointed. They had to know that they already put themselves in a position to receive opposition, maybe even death threats because of the conspiracy theories and when they sounded the horn. I would think that their safety, John, Marlon, I'm curious what you think, and Rob, same thing. My argument is their safety was actually more at risk before they were appointed as the FBI director and the deputy director for sounding the horn on conspiracy theories. I would think their safety is actually less of a concern in the position that they are, because they have the weight of the FBI to actually protect themselves. I think even before that. And the bottom line is, I know you're shaking your head, but this is just my opinion. But the bottom line is, and that's why I was kidding around in the beginning being sarcastic, this is a two-part story. We either owe Epstein and Maxwell an apology, or we have a huge problem here, and the whole country is spinning on its wheels. Marlon, I see you shaking your head. I'd love to hear from you, and especially that's the beauty of this. Opposition meets opportunity.
Yeah, I was shaking my head too because here's the thing. I'm curious as to how much power each of them actually has in the FBI. Do they actually run the FBI, or is there some sort of administrator that's, you know, a non-appointed lifelong administrator who's actually making the policy decisions over there? And if you don't agree with what he says, he's going to pick up the phone and call somebody above you, somebody even above the president. Because again, if the money players, the bankers, okay, don't go along with a lot of what Trump is doing, then things don't happen. So if you don't like what that guy says, he picks up the phone, makes a phone call, and then it's going to happen. You're going to get a phone call from that person telling you, you better get this done. So I question how much power they have. And also, I'm going to bring up JFK again. Remember, JFK is the president of the United States of America. He had the Secret Service. Yet we're talking the top world leader, and he was still murdered. And to this day, we don't know the absolute truth regarding that. So I'm not sure being the director of the FBI actually means anything, you know. Now, I also want to point out that what's strange about this is something you need to think about is why would both sides of the aisle protect Epstein? It doesn't matter who you are. You think that if one side knows that the other side is so in bed with Epstein, they'd be like, okay, we got to expose this. We got him. We got a political advantage here. Let's expose him. That's not happening. And the question we need to ask is why? Why? It must be something very big behind that they don't want it exposed. I'm going to bring up another example for you. We're bombing Russia through our proxy, which is Ukraine. And Trump is now sending more weapons to Ukraine. So we're not on best terms with Russia now, right? But yet, if you go in Antarctica, we have bases right next to each other. We're all cooperating. The whole world is working together down there, you know? So my question is, what's going on here? You know, how is it? What's so big that even though they have these little squabbles, you know, amongst each other, they're not going to touch the elephant in the room? And that's the question that we need to ask. What is so big that they don't want to touch that elephant?
I think like Kash, right? Bongino, Bondi, not a lot of money. I know Bongino did pretty well as a podcaster. He did fairly well. But then you look at Musk. Now, Musk has a lot of money. Now, when Musk leaves, he tells everybody there's an Epstein list and that Trump's on it. So what is Patel? What is Don Bongino getting? What is Bondi getting? Excuse me, to keep their quiet. Because if they do get pushed out, if Bondi does get pushed out and told to leave, there is something so big that they're going to be told, we're going to take care of you. You know, don't do this, don't do that, so that we can, you know, make sure that this list and this information never gets out. Because if she technically leaves and then she says, no, they're absolutely 100% was a list, that corroborates what Musk was saying. And now there's a whole nother question. So like you said, Marlon, there's huge money involved, right? The donors, everybody else, who knows who's on that list and who funds all these, political candidates and everything else. And the whole United States, really, to keep the economy going. So I think it absolutely 100% is a lot bigger than anything we've seen. And when people get into that position, they're probably told, hey, toe the line, tell them this, and you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life.
Again, then they're just not the one. Trump's not the one. Dan Bongino's not the one. And it just shows that our government is completely broken. And then it needs to be. There's also a clause in the United States Constitution that the people have the right to do what they need to do to oversee that the government is for the people and by the people. Because if we're covering up a sex traffic ring because you're afraid of your own life, or you're afraid of the implications of the economy, or you're afraid of all of this stuff, you're in the wrong position, bro. And that's it. And think about Dan Bongino, right? Dan Bongino has a lot of money. Dan Bongino's media companies were very successful, and he made a ton of money on the IPO of Rumble. Ton of money. He never needs to work again in his entire life. Also, another thing about Dan Bongino, if Dan Bongino was like, I'm not going along with the program, and he sent one tweet out saying what's going on or what he was told, he lights the world on fire. You know, where like an average guy like me, you, we send our tweet out, what's going to happen? Musk is going to keep that tweet buried. Nobody's going to see it. The media people that follow us, even if they want to write about it, the editors aren't going to let them. It's not going to get reported. Like, so he's at the top of the food chain. So to me, again, there needs to be answers. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail? And you know, I don't want to spend all day on this because I know everybody's waiting in the chat for us to talk about what's going on in the NYPD. But just last thing, I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Do you guys, like, based upon what you saw, like they sent a video out of like the whole day, and to me, I see a million ways with 1 minute blacked out. I see a million ways where he still could have got killed or something happened to him that could have happened. So I don't care that they released that one video. Doesn't prove anything to me. I still, like, it doesn't make sense from the things I heard that he was allowed out 12 hours a day. He had carte blanche visitors. He got treated completely differently than the rest of the prisoners. It doesn't make sense to me that he killed himself. So I don't believe that. Do you guys believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself? Because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino just told you, and Pam Bondi and Donald Trump told you he did.
Shout out to the chat here, friends and listeners. We appreciate it, by the way. Cynthia Beal says too coincidental. I'm with you on that. Let me tell you, girl. And I tell you why. I always say this. I really believe this. There are no coincidences. I believe that. There are none. And it's too coincidental to believe that this high prolific figure that has all this information with connections, as I said earlier in the beginning of the intro, connections to presidents, royalty, a lot of high prolific people that can really have their lives exposed, that nothing happens. I mean, to me, it's like a giant pressure cooker. Remember as a little kid, I mean, I used to light up fireworks on July 4th. We all did, right? And you remember, I mean, it's like this big bombshell that we're waiting for, right? Remember a little kid, you get those bandoliers and you light it up and you run away and then poof, nothing happens. And you're like, oh, I'll go do it again. You light it up and everybody's waiting and nothing happens. That's what this is. Everybody's been waiting for this bombshell to come out. And it was from Dan Bongino, because Dan Bongino, right, we were supposed to have trust and credibility in Dan Bongino. He was a cop. He was Secret Service. He was telling you about this conspiracy theory, right? And now he just lost all credibility. And I don't know. I don't believe he killed himself. I'm sorry. Just way too coincidental. This man had all his connections, because if he did, we owe him and his family a hell of an apology. That's what we're saying. This man killed himself for nothing. And then Maxwell is in jail for nothing. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. Or I mean, I think he got a couple of massages or something like that. I don't know what's going on here. This is a big problem. It's a big pressure cooker. We were all waiting for the bombshell, and it never came.
You know what I think? I think, hey, let's send out a little bit of a video, and the American people will buy this, and then we're done. So, yeah, I absolutely think he was killed. He did not kill himself, and they're like, hey, we can fool them. Just send out this little blurb. They'll buy it, and we'll be done with it. But you know, it's totally BS, man.
Yeah. Epstein, that certain billionaire with an island in the Caribbean, he didn't off himself. He was offed by other people. Okay, and that video, them playing that video is desperation, and you have to ask why the desperation. And now I'd like to also point out that billionaire with the island in the Caribbean, his mentor was a guy named Robert Maxwell, who was Ghislaine's father, and he was offed himself. Okay, when he no longer became useful to the people behind him, he was off because he knew too much. And the other thing I want to point out there is we asked the question before the segment started: who really runs the world? The people who run the world, well, their industry, their corporations, and it's money. Okay. Now we tend to think we elect people in government and they make decisions, but as you're seeing right now, they don't even make their laws that they pass right now, and they don't even read it or understand fully what they're passing into law. And if you look at the New York City race right now, guess who are all being involved in it? You get billionaires like Bill Ackman, and now Jamie Dimon of Chase is now making comments about the race, as well as raising like $20 million for an independent candidate. You see, it's money that runs the world. And because money runs the world, blackmail and trying to gain compliancy amongst each other and amongst governments is their currency. And that's what that billionaire with the island in the Caribbean did. So because he did that, he knows a lot. And to close out, the desperation is because the economy is in a terrible shape and they need to get certain things accomplished. And that is is what I believe is also weighing on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino's mind, the economy and saving the U.S. economy.
So saving the U.S. economy means that we should allow people to sex traffic children and pedophilia. I'm sorry, burn it down. They're not saving America by doing that. I'm sorry, burn it down.
Yeah.
Burn the entire economy.
I think
down.
it's a choice they're making, and I don't agree with it, but I think it's a choice they're making right now, and it's
so
sad.
Sell my soul, burn in hell, go along with everything, and allow children to be sex trafficked for the sake of the economy. Yeah, sorry, no, I don't care. I'm not. Let's get the pitchforks out, like the farmers. I'm good. Kingdoms have fell before that way. I just can't. I can't say it, but all right, let's get to what everybody's waiting for. I see all you guys. You guys are all itching for it, so might as well put your seatbelt.
They're asking.
I'm getting tweets. I'm getting cursed out here. All right, so obviously myself and Eric since the inception of us starting to comment on things, we've been telling you that the NYPD has been hiring people that have criminal records. I had a criminal record getting on the job, full disclosure. I didn't have a bad criminal record. I was arrested for minor crimes, but they were hiring people that had serious criminal records, people with gang tattoos, people with gang affiliations, people that should not ever become cops based upon their criminal history to meet diversity goals and to meet hiring goals. Right. And that's been clear as day since Bill de Blasio became the mayor. There was a huge push. And even in the Kelly era as well, even in the Ray Kelly Bloomberg era, there was a huge push for diversity. And when de Blasio came in, it came into full swing. Right. And then under Adams, it was like, forget about it, multiply. So we've been saying that they were hiring people with that shouldn't be hired just based upon their background check. We also said that they were hiring people that were on psychotic medications, so and had psychological issues and couldn't pass the psych. We also talked about how the psych was arbitrarily being used to disqualify alpha males, particularly white alpha males, to meet a diversity goal. Right? We've spoken about this at length. We've showed numerous examples of this, and we get a lot of pushback for it, but it's what's been happening. So recently a story broke about an inspector who's in charge of the candidate assessment division. And the story broke was that he hired 70 people that failed the psychological exam, and he pushed them through anyway. He exercised an authority to push them through anyway. Yesterday, Jessica Tisch, NYPD police commissioner, they announced I think they called, what was it, 31 or 33? Something like that. They called about 30 cops in and said, now some of them have been working. Some of them have been in commands, making arrests. Some of them are in the academy. Some of them have been writing summonses. They said that we want you guys to resign. You shouldn't have been hired in the first place. And we're going to get into that. So, Eric, what are your thoughts about all of this craziness?
So we could just look at Terrell Anderson's career and get an idea of where it's headed and his mindset. And we can see how the mission of policing completely changed. How do I know? I went to the academy with Terrell Anderson. We weren't very close, I have to say. He was a nice guy. He was always very congenial. He was a gentleman. He wasn't too extroverted. I got along. He was a nice guy. But I remember when he got on the job, he wanted to be a cop. And what's interesting about that, for me, to be a cop, I always talk about doing intrusive police work. And no matter what, I don't care what people say, things evolve over time. But the bottom line is, if you look at John Smith in 1950 and you look at the cop today, one thing that they still have in common is they still carry metal handcuffs. We don't have love cuffs on our belts. So policing, as much as it evolves, the fundamentals and the fabrication to keep public safety has not changed. And that means putting bad guys in handcuffs. Now, and the reason why I mention this, because throughout Terrell Anderson's career, he was pretty active and he was doing police work. But at some point when he becomes commanding officer, he was working in Brownsville and he initiated some type of community space in the precinct, like a cafe. They turned a part of the precinct into a cafe and this whole community, holistic type scenery. Now, where did that come from? Where did that come from? You know, now I'm not saying that you should engage the community. Yes, there should be a bond between police and community. But we started to get to the point where we crossed the boundary where we started to try to intercept too much with the community and become too friendly and kiss the community's ass in a sense where you know, with this whole neighborhood coordination officer program, that's where it all came about in the de Blasio era. And we started to change the nomenclature of the police department and not have this effort of making arrests and doing intrusive police work. And it was about, you know, it's breast cancer awareness month, and let's make the entire precinct look like a nursery and everything's pink. Yes, should we support breast cancer? But our mission should be out there getting bad guys. And the mission was retracted from that. And the same thing with Terrell Anderson in his precinct. It started to make it look like a nursery and a place to hang out, not necessarily a precinct where we bring bad guys in. It should be a place where people don't want to come to. I'm sorry. The precinct is symbolic of safety for the community. Hey, this is where we bring the bad guys. But we turn into this like a little cafe. And when Terrell Anderson becomes the commanding officer of the candidate assessment division, you have to ask yourself, why? Why would he put himself in a position to override people that did not meet the qualifications to become a police officer? I mean, do people actually believe he's some type of lone wolf that he just decided on his own? You know what? I'm going to override all these things. I need a certain amount of recruits to get in. I don't believe that. I don't buy that for a second. He's not an idiot. He's a smart guy. I believe he's a coward and a dummy for allowing them to make him who he is now. He's now the fall guy for the NYPD. We've identified different fall guys for the NYPD. The NYPD upper echelon does a great job of finding scapegoats. They found Paul Saraceno. We thought it was John Shell for a while, but now I think the new scapegoat is Terrell Anderson. So you have to ask yourself why. Now, I've said this a long time. I had a great conversation with a friend last night for a couple hours. And the conversation, I've been saying this for years. And I was told I'm wrong because I've been saying for years that, well, let me just even say this. Some of my cops said to me, why? Look, they hire just anybody. I said, no, that's not the case. They hire those that are meek, timid, and docile. Because if you're an alpha white male or an alpha white female, you're not getting the job. And my friend said, well, the entire world is meek, timid, and docile right now. And I said, yes, there is a majority of the world right now that we you know, in generations have changed that are not as alpha as we've seen before. But there are outliers. You know, when I do jujitsu, those outliers seek out jujitsu. People that are interested, that have a focus on martial arts, and that's a passion for them. And you would think the same thing for police work. Those outliers, alpha males and alpha females that want to help the public, that are willing to put their lives on the line, would seek out police work, law enforcement. I find it hard to believe that the majority of the people that are now hired are meek, timid, and docile because that's the way the cookie crumbled. So I don't buy this for a second that these cases are overridden, just arbitrarily. I think specifically it's for DEI and, of course, contracts. I'm sure there's phone calls. You know, the tier one of the upper echelon, chief so-and-so, hey, do me a favor, help out my kid. But I'm sure along with that, there's DEI, and I think it's both.
I think I had a long conversation with somebody, a good friend last night also, Eric. I think you may know him. But I agree. So why did Terrell get put in that spot? Who was getting anything out of it? So was it to overwrite to get DEI and get a certain amount of candidates that maybe weren't eligible that become eligible? It could. You think there's only like 70 that he did. Was it to get them over the mark so that they can say 51% of this class is minorities and 49% are white or whatever the case may be? Totally agree with you that male whites and even possibly female whites weren't getting hired as much as minorities were. I knew a friend that didn't get in because he cried because they asked him about his dog and he cried and they told him you failed the psychological. I said come on, that's a big stretch, right? So, why was he put there? Was he put there as one of, if you look at all the appointments that Madry has put in, all his cronies, were they put in there in positions? Miguel Iglesias, I got promoted to 1-star with Miguel Iglesias. Was he put there so that he would keep quiet certain things? Did Terrell get put in that position so that Madry can make contracts and get people put into those positions that would have normally failed or may have already been disqualified? Something that he's not supposed to do, not supposed to overturn if it's a final disqualification. So I think Terrell did both things. He did maybe some for DEI and then some for contracts. Absolutely, I agree 100% with you, Eric, that those are the two contributing factors. And I think it was self-serving on Terrell's behalf because that's what a lot of bosses, captains, and above do. They do these things that somewhat can compromise their own integrity to better themselves. That's not unheard of. So he does all of this, and now is Terrell gonna say that Madry asked me for these contracts, or Lieutenant Ebbs, or somebody made the call on his behalf, or is he gonna protect who really made these calls and really told him to make these decisions? So is he gonna go down as the fall guy, or is he gonna stand up and say, no, there's a bigger level of corruption than there is, like we saw with the 4 chiefs that just filed their lawsuits, right? He's in a position right now, still on the job, that he could be the whistleblower and say, yeah, I did it, but I did it because. So that's what needs to come out. Marlon, did you have a conversation last night?
This is Mike.
Yes, I did.
Well, I just want to say, because I know your mic was down, that there's a lot in the chat about DEI, and I just want you to clarify, DEI doesn't just mean black, because a lot of people say, oh, the black guy. No, DEI encompasses gender, race, ethnicity, different types, not just black.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't know what is DEI, right? But DEI played a strong role in this department for the last couple of years now, right? But what I think for sure happened was Terrell was acting with orders from above in what he was doing. I 100% believe that. Now, there's a lot of questions to this. Okay, first of all, I don't envy anybody who's in charge of candidate assessment right now in this atmosphere, because you're already handicapped. Okay, and they expect you to fill these academy seats, but nobody wants to join this department anymore. Okay, so you're not gonna get alpha males. You're not getting it that wider pool anymore. It's just not happening, right? But also, it seems to me that the groundwork is being laid right now to make Terrell the fall guy. Okay, And because of that, I didn't even think about this really until Eric Sanders brought up the good point about a PBA statement. And then I looked at the statement and I was like, wait a second, he's right. I mean, you could literally take out that whole rogue inspector part, and you could just take out those 4 words, and the statement wouldn't really change. It seems to me like they were told to add that in there, and it seems to me like it's some chief over there at 1PP or some commissioner, maybe Chell, picked up the phone, and it was time to call in the relief pitcher. It's time to call in the setup man so that they could lay the groundwork for Terrell. And because there's no way to me, when you look at what candidate assessment did and what we know of the process to get to the review board, it just strikes me as odd that those anomalies of him constantly, of him like flipping the switch, wouldn't have been noticed. It seems, and also, why would somebody who was to me was a rising star, why would you sacrifice your career? Why you wouldn't just think out of blue to do that unless you knew you had some sort of a tacit approval from above, So I think he's being set up for the fall guy, to be the next fall guy, and I think we need to start working on that thumbnail for that episode.
Yeah, no, dude, 100%. I mean, that's the thing, that people are trying to paint him that he was rogue, he went off the rails. Whose mic is that? Can you guys mute your mics in between? But that's what's being painted out, is that, like, we're being told that it like he went off the rails. He's a rogue agent. Even the PBA is utilizing that phrase, like Marlon points out, rogue inspector. Does anyone here believe for 1 second that the police commissioner isn't fully abreast at all times about what's happening with the current classes and how they fill them and what the numbers are and what they need to make? Does anyone here believe that the chief of personnel isn't fully abreast day in and day out about what's happening? Does anyone believe that Terrell Anderson wasn't in contact with the chief of personnel daily? I mean, because I don't. And the chief of personnel is not in contact with the police commissioner daily about all these issues. Like, we're sitting here, and like, not only is Terrell Anderson being scapegoated, but so are the cops that they're asking to resign. They're using them for a system that's been put in place for 30 years. Now, I don't agree with the system. I see Eric Sanders in the chat. I don't agree with many of your takes on a lot of the stuff that you put out there, but I totally agree that I don't agree that this system is proper, but this is the system that's been in place. And it was put in place for Terrell Anderson, who was following orders and operating in the system, and so I'm not holding them accountable. I'm not holding Terrell Anderson accountable for making those decisions, which were approved by others, and that's the other thing. He's not the final approver on it. He's not. So, that's the thing that people have to grasp. And the other thing is, this has been going on for almost 10 years. So why are these officers being asked to resign and not the hundreds that came before them where the overrides were put in place? Why are we blaming Terrell Anderson and not everybody that was in his position before? Why are we blaming Terrell Anderson and not blaming and all of the chief of personnel's prior that this happened under, and the police commissioners that this happened under? Why are we not bringing that up? Why now? You know why now? Because it's a cover-up. It got exposed, and now everybody's scrambling. Oh my God, no, it was this rogue inspector. And here you see who the PBA really works for. Not the rank and file of the NYPD. They work for the city, and they run cover. And that goes for all the unions. I'm not just singling out the PBA, but they just made it very obvious with that rogue inspector comment. There was absolutely no need to put that in there, and they went out of their way to add that in there. So I'm like, when I'm sitting here and I'm watching all this, I'm like, I get it. Should people with psychological issues be on the job? No. But again, I sat there and I said, I've been saying for 3 years, and a lot of you've been saying that psychological test is broken and it's arbitrary. So I don't know that these people have psychological issues the same way that I know a lot of people that failed the psych that I know for a fact don't have psychological issues and should have been on the cops and should have been on the NYPD and would have been good cops, as they're productive members of society and they're good people and they're family people, so like it's the whole thing to me is broken. And anyone trying to just point the finger at Terrell Anderson and these 30 cops, you're not looking at the big picture.
I didn't realize it, but on Wednesday, I did the show. Rob couldn't make it, so I did the show on Wednesday with Ron Layson. We did the executive perspective. And one of the questions we got for the Q&A segment was, what would you do as a police commissioner if you were appointed to boost morale? And the first thing I remember I said was, I would stop with this whole scapegoating within the NYPD, because that's what the NYPD does. We've all seen it through our entire careers. John, you saw it. So did you, Marlon. And Rob, you definitely saw it, making it to deputy chief. The job does a great, and I say the job, I mean the leadership, the upper echelon does a great job of finding scapegoats. And that's what I think Internal Affairs does. I think that's their ultimate mission, is to find the scapegoat to protect the top tier. Samara Cohen says it here, total scapegoat. And that's what I see. I see the walls closing in on Terrell Anderson. And that's why I put out a post. I said, Terrell, how could you be that dumb? Cowardice is a sin. To allow them to box you in, especially watching what has been going on. We've sounded the horn, this entire Finest Unfiltered family, but particularly John and myself. We started almost 3 years ago, and we sounded the horn. We spoke about the disciplinary matrix. We talked about CCRB. We talked about the psych issues that are getting on the job. And both ways, we said there are people getting on the job that have psych issues, and we said that the psych assessment that they do is unfair. And we've identified both. And here's the problem with the NYPD. And John Scola said it best when he did a show on Sal Greco's show. And he said the NYPD just pays for litigation, but they never get to the root cause of problems. We need to strip this back and find out what is the assessment, what is the psychological assessment, and why did Terrell Anderson have this authority? And what else do we know about in the NYPD? There is always oversight. And that's why I say every chief that is active right now, not the ones that are terminal, riding their timeout, if they're active and they're engaged in everyday workings of the NYPD, they are compromised. Because what do we know about the NYPD? There's always a circle of information and there's always oversight. It's impossible that Terrell Anderson was this rogue inspector and no one knew that he was authorizing candidates that were disqualified. And there's no way that there wasn't executives that outranked Terrell Anderson and knew. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure there's contracts that came from Madry, maybe John Shell. There's speculation. I'm sure there's contracts. I'm sure there was phone calls and said, hey, you need to put this person in. But now Terrell Anderson is the one holding the bag. Wasn't it Lieutenant Epps attorney Eric, who's on the chat right now, who said that they needed to preserve the digital devices for Lieutenant Epps because she had the contracts, she had the information. So there's a lot going on here. I know Terrell from the academy. As I said, I wasn't close with him. I don't know him that well, but I knew him as a nice guy. He was smart. He wasn't an idiot. But obviously, as you progress in this job, to move up in the Eric Adams administration, you have to remove integrity and become a loyalist and forget where you came from. And Terrell, you forgot where you came from, and you allowed them to box you in to become the fall guy. And that's why you became an idiot. And this is stupid. So hopefully, Eric Anderson has you speak out and you expose that they ordered you to do this. I find it hard to believe that Terrell said, you know what, I need to make a certain amount of numbers, and I'm just going to do these overrides and just be the lone wolf in this and do this completely on his own. There's nothing in it for him to do that. I mean, what are the ramifications? If he doesn't meet a specific goal for a class, what are the ramifications? And that's why, John, what you said earlier is absolutely right. The police commissioner is always supposed to be in the know. I find it hard to believe that she's not in the know. that the chief and personnel is not in the know. This entire circle, and that's why I talked about these promotions, that every chief is compromised when it comes to potential pay for play for promotions, because there's a round robin where everyone, you can't say they're compartmentalized. Each unit on the job has to be comprised of information for someone to get promoted. And the same thing for someone to get recruited and for someone to pass the police academy. There needs a round robin of information. So, this is a complete disaster. And I feel sorry for everyone, even if there are psych issues. If someone was handed a gun and a shield and they went out in the streets of New York City and they took the job and they were awarded the job, and now they have to get terminated for the NYPD's mistake, too bad, so sad. And this opens up a whole new can of worms, because there's a bigger picture here. Every arrest is summoned. Every arrest, every summons, every police scene that these officers have taken part of is now tainted. This could cost the city billions. This is a major problem. This opens up the can of worms from the inside.
I totally agree. I also think, though, that it's a recruitment problem, right? It's not. It shouldn't be Terrell's problem. It shouldn't be, getting qualified, requalifying candidates that didn't get qualified. That's a recruitment problem, because Terrell could easily went into the chief of personnel or the police commissioner and said, I don't have that many people for this class. I only have, 450 as opposed to 600. And who's going to dispute that? Okay, we put a smaller class in for 450 rather than reclassifying people that might not be qualified. Now, I'm going to tell you, the PC is not going to call anybody. The chief of department isn't going to call anybody and say, "Hey, put these," even with a hook call. It's not going to be, I need this person put in. They have the cronies call in, so you're going to get a call from a captain or a lieutenant, and they're going to call you up and say, "Hey, the PC wants you to pick this person up for this particular unit, or put this person in." And I'm going to assume that Terrell probably got the same phone call, because what they do is they insulate themselves, right? So it can never get back to them. So if Madry said, I got 30 guys I need you to get through, Terrell, he's not going to tell Terrell. He's going to tell his lieutenant or somebody and say, call up Terrell and tell him that these 30 names, I want him to reclassify their total disqualification, which would only next step would have been, and thanks for Ron Layson putting this all out for us, putting the next step with a total disqualification into the Civil Service Commission. So we flipped somebody that should not have been flipped at all. And there's a paper trail. So doesn't Terrell know that when he does this, his name is going to be out there? He does that because he thinks and he knows that, the chief of department is asking for me this. I got to do it because it's my career. If I don't do it, I'm sunk. But then we talk about integrity, right? Where is the integrity? Is the integrity to make sure you get the most qualified candidates and put them out? Or is the integrity to see when am I going to get promoted because I did the chief a favor and I put in these 70 guys and I flipped these 70 guys? So that it's insane that he would think that and just do it. And rogue, absolutely not. Nobody does that on their own. In other words, if they told me, hey, we need 30 candidates for ESU and I only had 15, and I say, you know what? I have 15 candidates that failed the physical test for ESU. But you know what? I want to make sure I get to those 15 in. So I'm going to flip it and tell them they all passed. That's absurd. You don't do that, and you don't do that on your own. And I can't tell you how many times we had calls for people to come into ESU, and thank God there was a physical, because half of the calls that they called, they couldn't even pass the physical, and we would call them back and say, absolutely unequivocally, this person is not ready. So you better take your name off of them because they're a liability to the department, to you, to me, and I'm not going to approve it. So you have to put your stand there. And I know. Speaking to Ron last night, Ron said there were phone calls that he adamantly went back to them and said, I can't do anything for you. This guy's a train wreck. So you have to have the capability of doing that. So my real question is, why did Terrell do this? It's not rogue. Terrell was asked to do this in the implication that later on you would be taken care of. And that's the problem with the department, right? Everybody does things not for the betterment of the department, but for the betterment of themselves. It's very, very, very selfish, especially when it gets from the captain and above, right? When those promotions become discretionary. It happens all the time.
Yeah, I just like to point out that Terrell came from Brooklyn North. And if you came from Brooklyn North, you probably had a phone call to, you probably had contact with Chief Madry. Okay. And that means, you look at Chief Henderson, you look at all these other, especially these other black chiefs. Okay. They seem to have some sort of click with Madry. So I think it would be naive of us to think that he didn't have some approval from above, or some sort of protection from above, which made him feel comfortable in doing it. Yeah. And to Eric's point, I actually believe in this case that the actual PC may not have any knowledge of this. And I'm saying that because the PCs aren't like the old traditional PCs. It's not like Kelly knew what was going on, or Bratton. The PCs now is an extension of the first deputy commissioner. She's a figurehead.
Great point, Marlon. That's a great point.
Sure, yeah, Tish has a lot more.
But she watches the show and she knows that we've been saying that they've been overriding candidates for the psych. So I don't buy that for a second. She's fully aware. And you work for Eric Adams.
Well, she might be a little more aware partly because she knows we're here and we're talking about this stuff, but she doesn't know the minutia of NYPD like a guy who grew up in it, like Kelly, and because she doesn't know about that, because she was never actually uniformed personnel. I think she's kind of at a loss to a little bit of what goes on there, and also we've already established that Chell, Kaz are Adams guys. So even though Tish is running the department, I think Tish is being given rope to go as far as Adams will allow it right now. Maybe right now he's giving her more rope because he has bigger problems right now. But she's given rope to run only up until up until Adams has a problem with it, and then that rope is cut off. Okay. But whereas Chell and Kaz are like, they speak for Adams. They're tight with Adams. We see Kaz and Chell talking to Trump and going to all these meetings where you'd expect the PC to be there, but the PC ain't there. So in this case, I do have a feeling that she may not have necessarily known the full extent of what.
Well, I got to ask you a question. I don't mean to interrupt you, brother.
No,
I love you. I love you. But are we to believe that Jessica Tish is totally clueless? I mean, listen, despite her experience and non-experience as a police officer, she's super intelligent. And she said it herself, she's data-driven. She created a lot of databases that the police department now utilizes, which probably encompasses candidate assessment as well, being with her background with ITB. To believe that she's completely clueless in this, I find that hard to believe, and that part I don't believe. She may not have the understanding on how the networking of the police department, the sorority frat house type of environment, how things work necessarily, but she's data driven. She's super intelligent, so she's not totally clueless. She knows what questions to ask. That part, I have to push back on that. What do you think, Marlon? You think
can I just jump in? Is she not? Maybe she's not being told the truth. Maybe she's being told what she wants to hear, right? Because there's a lot of actors in there. So I can agree with Marlon and you, Eric, both. But I could see where she's not being told the truth. She's being told a story so that she can tell the story for Eric Adams, and that politics can continue for him. But I think that there's also that's part of it too. Like, don't tell me the truth. Tell me what I want to hear, and that happens a lot.
Listen. She's the most overrated police commissioner in the history of every police commissioner in the nation. I mean, this is a joke to say that she doesn't know that what's happening in the NYPD. I mean, first of all, we're going to continue, and it was reported again today. We're going to continue that there's 34,000 cops in the NYPD. I mean, come on, nobody believes that. This is like it. First of all, that's a lie right on its face. And to sit here and pretend that the police commissioner, the first deputy commissioner, and the chief of personnel were not fully aware of this, it's a lie. I'm sorry. And if that's the case, they should all be fired today. Every single one of them. If you didn't know that your personnel bureau was hiring candidates who can't pass a psychological exam, it's the same thing as if you were hiring ESU candidates that couldn't pass the physical. And we just put this little thing in place, not for it to be abused, but just for, when we need to use it. But the way he used it was wrong. And Ron's on the chat now saying, oh, well, he clicked the button. Oh, so then the police commissioner, the chief of personnel, the first step, and everybody who was aware of what exactly was happening and aware that these people, they're all held completely unaccountable. So, yeah, no, we just pressured him enough to write that summons that was wrong or make that arrest that was wrong. It wasn't me. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not buying this 1 second. This is like, honestly, it's a fairy tale. It's spinning a fairy tale, in my opinion. It's a complete lie.
And you know what else? You know what else, John? Marlon, Rob, the chat here, anyone active retired from the police department, especially the NYPD. What does everything have in a database in the NYPD or any documentation that we do?
Paper trail.
Paper trail. Exactly, Marlon. A date and a timestamp. Every documentation, every database has a date and a timestamp, almost as a fingerprint. When Terrell put his fingerprint, or someone put here, Mikey G, you're right, digital footprint, someone saw it. There's always oversight. Every executive is looking at that to see who's going in which class. Now, there's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm sure if we start to peel and look at these candidates individually and start to look at their folders, I'm sure we're going to see connections, and I'm going to assume we'll probably see connections to Gaban. Excuse me. We'll probably see connections to Madry. We'll probably see connections to Kinsella. We'll probably see connections to Pearson and maybe Banks and some others in the Eric Adams circle of cronies and nepotism. There's no doubt in my mind. But if anyone wants to believe that Terrell Anderson just took it upon himself because of the extreme pressure of recruiting, just to make these overrides, just to meet a specific number, is absolutely foolish. Now, don't get me wrong. Marlon, you said it earlier. There's definitely pressure working in recruiting, trying to meet numbers. In any position, if you have to meet a deadline or numbers, there's always pressure. But are you going to give up your integrity for that? Absolutely not. Are you going to put yourself on the line where you actually, we're now teetering on possibly breaking the law, not just policy. So this is a big deal. There's no doubt in my mind that Terrell Anderson was ordered and directed to take these steps and got some phone calls. And that's another problem. Ron Lason, was saying that this, I'm sure there was phone calls and this is how this proceeded forward. Well, that doesn't make it right either. That shows another problem that, and people can say this is going on forever. But does that mean that we allow this problem just to go on forever? At some point, when are we going to stop this process? There shouldn't be any phone calls because, again, it proves what we're saying, though, that they're saying this because how do these people know then that there's issues with disqualification or pre-disqualification of a family member or someone that they want to get on the job? How do they know? Who has access to that? Unless they actually speak to the candidate. And how does that candidate actually know also until they receive a letter that they're disqualified? So how do they know who has access to it and who has authority? So, yes, does Terrell Anderson have access? But who else has access? But Terrell Anderson was given the authority to take such action. And now we see the walls closing in on him. And they've set him up as the fall guy, including the PBA. Now, I gave credit to the PBA. At least they took action. But once I read that verbiage also, that part is disappointing. And that's why I say Terrell Anderson, how could you be so dumb for them to set you up? Because it's cowardice. And people say, oh, well, how could that happen? Really? Look at the vaccine mandate. Look at how I was attacked with CCRBs. Look at Sal Greco. Look at the finest Unfiltered family. Look at many others that experienced, being the fall guy in this job. No one stood up for me. They were so happy. Go out. Do me a favor. Get guns. Stop the robbery patterns in the Bronx. Do all this. And then when the CCRBs were mounting and targeted by an overzealous civilian complaint review board, oh no, Eric did it. He was the one. He took it upon himself to go make those gun arrests. Are we to believe that Terrell Anderson just took it upon himself? Come on now. And I don't believe that Jessica Tisch is completely clueless in this. She's data driven, and she knows damn well before they put things forward, let's see the data.
Just want to give a shout out to Tony Ulrich on his birthday. Tony, thanks for listening. And then there's
56,
a rumor
56.
56 today, baby. Congrats. God bless. So N Need says there's a rumor going around that Anderson is going to receive charges by the DA for falsifying documents. So I'm going to tell you right now, I think that's a bunch of baloney. I think that's a bunch of bull crap. Because if he's going down, then a whole lot of people are going down with him. So I think that's a bunch of bull crap. I think that rumor has been put out to discredit him. I think that's coming from the upper echelon of the NYPD and the unions, and that's a smear tactic and a smear campaign to dirty him up. And I'm not a fan of Terrell Anderson, by the way. I'm not. I could really give two craps. I don't know the guy. I have nothing to gain by covering for him or saying this. I'm just giving my honest opinion on what it is. Somebody asked what the makeup of the candidates are. I don't know, but I'll guarantee it's the majority of it is going to be black and brown people and women. And then maybe a couple of white kids that are well connected to some chiefs. I mean, again, when we look at where these overrides were done, let's look at that ethnic makeup. And you know what you're going to see? You're going to see it was disproportionately used to hire minorities and women over white people, right? You're going to see that. I'm guaranteed. I don't even have the list. I'll bet it right now. What's that on Polymark? I'm right, 99.9%. And then maybe, and you're -5 going against me on that. So it's I don't know, but am I sitting here and am I holding Terrell Anderson? Am I saying he's completely guiltless in this? No, I'm not saying that either. But this is the system that's in place in the NYPD. If Terrell Anderson spoke up about it, that's the end of his career. If he said no, that's the end of his career. Am I saying that should have been the end of his career? The vaccine mandate should have been the end of everybody's career, in my opinion. Honestly, it should have been the end of everybody's career, in my opinion. And it wasn't. And if that wasn't, then nothing is. Nothing. We're all going to lie, cheat, and steal to get ahead. And that's what, Terrell Anderson's following the system. This is the system. Keep your mouth shut. Do what you're told. Hopefully nothing comes out in the media and you'll be rewarded. But if it does, we're going to throw you under the bus. That's it. And that's what's happening to him,
John and Marlon, I got a serious question. Seriously, because we learned a lot from Travis Rutherford, who's in internal affairs. He's so intelligent. Because this is a potential crime in New York City, should the Florida sheriffs be notified? Should we have Florida investigate this case? I mean, that would make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. So to John's point, remember the motto is you either take a seat at the table or you're on the menu. Okay, so Terrell was just he knew what it was about.
You know what time it is.
Yeah. And I just want to point out though that it is potentially possible that Tisch didn't know. First of all, there are questions about when this occurred. Whether I'm not sure. Maybe it's just me, but I'm not sure it's been established what the time frame was. If this happened
since the moment it was implemented. Since the moment it was implemented, this has been going on.
No, we know this, but we're talking about them trying to railroad, with Terrell, make him the fall guy. But the point I'm trying to make here is that it's I still have questions about how much Tisch knows. And I'd also like to bring up this example. Remember, Chief Pontillo went to Sewell with information about the CRT guys. And Sewell, it seems like she had no clue what was going on with the CRT guys. And remember, she was already a supervisor in Nassau, and she's been a cop. She's been uniformed personnel. So we might be different from Nassau, but we can't be naive and not think that to some small extent, this little cliquishness or these politics don't exist to some part over there. So
second most overrated police commissioner in the America's history.
Yeah. But so she had no clue CRT was doing what they were doing, and when Pontillo told her, she had a problem with it, and that eventually, as was noted in our past episode, that led her out the door. So I think again the clique that ran the department, she is to some extent is outside that clique, and I think that kind of limits her information. I'm not scapegoat. I'm not giving any excuses because you're the boss, and stuff rolls downhill. So, but I'm just saying that Terrell was in with that clique, and that's the Madry clique, the Chell, the Banks, the Adams. He was in that clique, and he had some sort of tacit protection, and I think that gave him comfort in doing what he did. And for those of you who don't know, also that what he basically did was he the people who got the disqualification letters, he basically hit the switch and flipped them so that they would then go forward to the review board. And that the paper trail that we noted before is that somebody has to notice that all these consistent, it was noted 33 candidates, I believe. Someone has to notice, hey, these 33 guys were flipped. Did nobody notice this continuing pattern? Yeah, that's the question here.
You know what? With the criminal aspect, though, I don't see any criminal crime committed by Terrell. This is an administrative thing. If he's allowed to do it, if he's allowed to click on something and change the candidate's qualification and turn him from a disqualification to a qualified candidate, and that's in place in the police department, and he has the capability. He didn't go into the computer system and revamp it. He didn't circumvent anything. He did what he was allowed to do, what the department apparently sees that was the authority to do. So he clicks on that. Now, and the other aspect, he came on in 2004. So he's already an inspector with 21 years on the job. He's a rising star, right? He's going to be a chief. He's in a position to be a chief, at least a deputy chief. And then I guarantee you he's going to catapult to either a 2 or a 3. He was on the way up. They were farming him and molding him. So he was going to do anything that he was requested to do. So, to say he's definitely the fall guy. And he was doing that because he was told, go in this spot, just like I believe that Miguel Iglesias was, put these people in this spot and we'll take care of you. We'll do everything you can for it. You look at Chris McCormick, who says, I was giving people into the given to me that I had to take, and I wouldn't take them. Well, that's what Terrell should have done at that point. Terrell could have been part of that lawsuit with Serena. He clearly had the say in it because he didn't have to do that, and he said, I'm not going to do it. So I think because he thought he was a rising star, and I assume that he was, he should have fought back a little bit. But then again, that's the end of your political and your career.
Well, I know where Terrell worked the majority of his career in Brooklyn North. He worked in narcotics also. And yes, there's no doubt about it. Marlon, he does have a connection to Madry and this administration right now, which is why, don't get me wrong, he did pass these tests, which is why he's a rising star in this administration. But the question is this. I know Ron Lace and Brother Ron is on, and he's defending the administrative process for candidate assessment. But the question is this. There is a 4-step process for a candidate to be processed and to be vetted for the police academy, right? That's your character assessment, your physical, your medical, and your psychological. So the question really is this. In this administrative process, if that's the case, we have to go through so many steps. Why do we give the ability and the authority of one person to make the assessment and give them the authority, and give them the authority to override this entire process? We spend all this money for someone to do medical process. You spend the entire day, right? 8 hours, you're doing your medical. You spend the entire day doing your physical, your character assessments, right? Your psychological test, your written and oral. It's a lot of time and a lot of money invested. But yet we gave someone the authority just to override that, which I agree with you. I don't see a crime in this. I see an administrative error. But the question is why? And the question is this. I know, Ron, you defend the process, but what we're saying is we We just gave one man the authority to make an override on anyone they want to. So any phone call, no problem. Here you go. You want this person in. So, but the question is now also is how do we get to the point that these police officers were identified? Because I agree with John. John and I talk about this all the time. We spoke about this at the inception of this podcast when we started podcasting together, that this process has probably been going on for over a decade. But why was it identified at this point? And why was it these police officers? Is it currently a part of this FBI probe? Is that why? Is it coming to light? It's possible. Is it, also the timing is impeccable with these 4 lawsuits from these chiefs, these super chiefs. So is it timing? I think this process is going on a long time, and I have a problem that one man has the authority to make this exception.
But I'm gonna, if I could throw it back to Marlon real quick, because Marlon brought up a really great point last night while we were talking, that he can click that, but there's still another process that after he clicks it and requalifies a candidate that would disqualify, there's a whole nother process, right? I mean, so there's
other people have to approve that, right?
Yes, Marlon, you brought up a great point last night.
And other people have to approve that. Are they under the rank of Terrell Anderson? No. Right? Like, what are we talking about here? And like, honestly, the process is indefensible to me. I get it, Ron. You put it in place. Why? Why is it put in place? To override psychological candidates. They failed the psychological test. I mean, you obviously thought that was a good idea to do. You put it into place, and now it's being used, and you're blaming the guy that's using it. I don't understand. He did what was set up in the system, And so, like, I think that I'm 100% agree with Eric. Why was it put in place in the first place? Why was it put there? Shouldn't be there. Shouldn't have been on him to do that. It was put on there for him to do that, to have a fall guy. That's it. It's that simple. Now, he clicked the button. Shouldn't have he shouldn't even have the ability. Shouldn't have the ability to override a psychologist. The same way the department shouldn't have the ability to override my medical doctor. The same way the department shouldn't have the ability to override my religious beliefs. Shouldn't be there. Like it's there for a reason to be utilized. And just to answer your question, Eric, the reason I think this came out is because it got exposed, and now they're playing cover up, and now we got to play like the best police commissioner that ever existed in the world is doing something about it by hanging this inspector and these guys out to dry. And it's bullshit. It's honestly, it's complete bullshit. Like, I'm not like, that system should have never been in there. And by the way, did we take it out? No. Did we reinstitute the run for candidates? No. Are we stopping to hire candidates with terrible criminal histories? No, we're not doing any of that. We're not stopping anything. We're going to keep pushing it forward. Let's just throw Terrell Anderson under the bus, make it look good, and we keep this train moving. And we keep doing stupid things. And we keep lowering standards, And the thing is, like, and people are like, well, I don't want to work with anybody that failed the site. You're already working with them. Some of them have 5 years on the job. Some of them have 7 years on the job. What are you talking about? You work with people that failed that site. You work with people with criminal history already. You work with people that didn't meet the physical qualifications already. This is the system that's been put in place. And like, what do you guys think about? What do you guys think about now? They're like, all right, resign.
Yeah. Well, if I may, John, Terrell didn't have the power to override the notice of disqualification, and that means the people above him, somebody above him, somebody above him approved it, and that's the question here. It's like that. There's a paper trail. There's obviously a paper trail that there was this consistent candidates being sent to the review board that were already disqualified. Somebody had to know it, And the other thing I want to say is that there's more to this, because Patrick Gordon also made a comment about it. And the thing about Patrick Gordon's comment about it is that he's talking about a psych exam. Now, I think the process is, I think some of these, first of all, I think medical division has a lot of crackpot doctors in there. Okay, they do. Just my experience going through the entire process. when I was a kid, I made it through. I did the whole process, the same process to become a cadet, the medical process, and then I had to do it again to become a cop. And when I went to become a cop, I had a doctor tell me I can't do it. I can't become a cop because I have an umbilical hernia. I went to my doctor, and they're like, "What is he talking about?" You know. So there's a lot of crackpots, and the psychologist had me in that 30 minutes talking about my fear of flight. I'm like, it's not stopping me from flying because I flew halfway around the world already. So I think, first of all, that process is not exactly like a fully functioning process in itself. But I think the fact that the PBA statement, and now you have Patrick Gordon's statement, which is putting all the blame on the psychological test, is an indication of them trying to make Terrell the fall guy because they don't want you to look beyond him at those people who had to at the review board. Somebody at the review board who got these documents and they happened to miss the consistent pattern that was the ongoing pattern that was happening.
And just before you guys go, and Pat Donahue brought up a good point too. What about the people that pressured him up top? The chief of department, the police commissioner, whoever else. What about those people? They're unaccountable just because he clicked the button?
I think. Sorry, Rob. I don't want to. Rob, you want to go? I just want to say that this completely mirrors what happened with Epps. It's almost like exactly the same thing. I mean, if you look at the whole situation with Epps, they threw Paul Saraceno under the bus. Said he was the one that signed the overtime slips, and we see the same thing happening. Terrell Anderson pressed the button. So, I mean, listen, if you're an active executive within the NYPD right now, we know you watch the podcast, especially the ones that hate it. We know you watch it. It's great. It's educational, a lot of information. But here's a great opportunity to get educated today. Ask yourself, if you're in a position right now, if you're a commanding officer of a unit or a specialized unit or a prolific unit, something that holds a lot of weight within the police department, if you sign a slip or press a button, ask yourself, what are you signing and what button are you pressing? Because if shit rolls downhill for you, you're the fall guy. Or if you're a woman, you could be the woman that goes down in this. But you have to ask yourself. And that's why I said there are checks and balances. There's so much oversight in this job. We spoke about it, Marlon. Terrell Anderson clicked the button, but there was oversight after that also. There's an executive board to actually have oversight and to sign off and to vet the candidate that actually goes to the police academy. I just think it's crazy at this point that we've gotten to this, that we don't correct the root problems. And you're right, Marlon. There's some real quacks in that medical and that psychological. There's some real quacks that interview potential police officers who ask the craziest questions. I know. When I went through my psychological, I came back. I'm a combat veteran. They asked me some crazy questions. And so I know there's some real quacks there. But at the same token, why don't we fix that problem? Just as the same thing, we identified the problem with the drug test for the NYPD. We identified there's a problem. Why don't they fix the actual testing instead of telling cops that they can't take supplements in GNC? Why don't we fix the actual problem and fix the drug test? It's the same thing here. Why do we give Terrell Anderson the authority to press that button? Why don't we fix the problem and get rid of these quacks in the psychological assessment and get a new entire vetting system so that we get the proper police officers instead of giving Terrell, or any other commanding officer, doesn't have to be Terrell, the authority to click a button? Because if that's the case, why don't we even have a vetting process? Why don't we just have Terrell just press a button who he likes? Oh, Caban, who do you want? Oh, yeah, I got your cousin. I got your nephew. Hold on. Who's this, Marjorie? Yeah, I got 5-year girlfriends. Hold on. Click, 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 click. That's all you have to do. Why do we even need this vetting process? I mean, we're making a joke out of it, but that's legitimately what we have.
Yeah, though, Ron told us last night that after he clicks qualified, takes him off the non-qualification list, that it goes to a sergeant, and then that sergeant filters it out to somebody in the personnel bureau to do a review of that case. So the thing is, that sergeant could also send it back to Terrell as the not only the one that changed the qualification, but also the one that reviews it again. So, or could have sent it to somebody that Terrell knew that was going to actually, approve his requalification. So that there's a lot of spokes in this wheel, and I don't think we've gotten to the full effect of it, because I think Terrell maybe needs to say exactly what's going on, because there is definitely craziness going on. And to your point, Eric, absolutely. Just because you didn't put leaves on the tree, or you didn't after being asked, and Ron and I had spoken this on one of our podcasts to the psychologist, after I was asked 500 times, would I shoot the deer? At the end of that test, I was ready to shoot the deer, because I was so sick of hearing it. You don't stop asking me about it. Am I going to shoot the deer? So yeah, I think the process, it wouldn't be bad to be vetted by, guys that retired, and see if you're capable of handling the job. Train people to evaluate what the officer does, what the officer's job is going to be, not some 25-year-old that just got his PhD and has no clue what the police department does, and only sees what he sees on paper and what he has to ask. So the system definitely needs to be revamped.
Mm-hmm. So, and then the other thing is, though, if the chief of if I'm the CEO of the candidate assessment division, and the chief of department calls me and says, John, I want this candidate in and I want him overridden, is that a lawful order? Because it sounds like one to me. You know what I mean? What am I calling up? Yeah. Am I going to write, as per Chief Jeffrey Mandry, I'm putting this person through? Absolutely, I am. I'm going to do that. I don't know that most people would, because they'd be scared to do it. But I'm saying, hey, listen, Chief, he's got this. If you want, I'll do it. I'll do it as per you. But I'm not putting him through. So could Terrell Anderson have done that? Yeah. But to me, regardless how it is, it's a lawful order. But like you said, Rob, that's not what's done. It's a lieutenant in his office. It's this, it's that, it's the other thing. So yeah, should he have pushed back? Absolutely. I agree with you guys. He should have pushed back, but he shouldn't have the ability to do it in the first place. I think the system is totally broken. If you're going to do a psychological override, it should have been thought out. I could have, if you would have had me in this room when we were creating it, I would have told you guys, like, this is going to be misused. This is arbitrary. This is wrong. And if you're telling me that you need the final authority, then you're telling me that the system's broken. You're telling me that the system's broken, and instead of fixing it, you're looking for an end around. You're looking for an easy out. And that's what they had. This is an easy out that he exercised in his authority. So technically, did he do anything wrong? No, he didn't. Because who's to say that the override that another CEO of the candidate assessment did was fine, but the ones that he did are no good? It's like, wait a minute, why not? He has that authority. You gave him that power. So it's just an arbitrary thing. Pat Gordon puts out this statement. And I didn't know, so for all you other fraternal organizations, the Hispanic Society and the Guardian Society now could weigh in on political issues, but none of you else can. Nobody else can. And again, they're sitting here and saying that the psychological is culturally biased. And I'm going to say that when you look at the numbers, you're going to see a total different story of what they're saying. They're not it is culturally biased, and it's culturally biased towards white males, particularly those with an athletic build, particularly those that look like alpha males in the police department. Because when you see who was overridden, again, you're going to see a huge disparity in gender and a huge disparity in ethnicity and race and color. Like, you're going to see those disparities, and believe me, it's gonna sway all towards black, brown, and female. And no one's going to sit here and argue with it, because you all know I'm right. But this is what Pat Gordon said. This is the most angry and disappointed I have been in a very long time. The NYPD in New York have known for years that the psychological evaluation is culturally biased, and our hiring practices are flawed at best and racist at worst. From my understanding, most of these so-called psychologists aren't licensed and have little to no experience with community of colors. Yet based on a 10-minute interview where we discuss our life experiences, and because it often differs from their experiences, our people are disqualified for thinking that isn't considered mainstream. The NYPD and the city of New York failed Inspector Anderson. This is where I agree with him. I don't agree with I think I agree with him that the system's broken. I don't agree with why he's saying it's broken. I'm saying that it's arbitrary. I'm not saying it sways one way or the other. I'm saying it sways one way or other depending on the politics of New York City at the time. So at one point, it may have been used to disqualify black candidates, but today it's being used to disqualify other people. And so it's arbitrary. The whole thing's so I agree and disagree with him. But here's the point. I totally agree. The NYPD in the city of New York failed Inspector Anderson, and they failed these 37 people who have been asked to resign or face termination without due process. Totally agree. Inspector Anderson was placed in the Candidate Assessment Division to address and triage historical systemic issues without proper policy changes that would have finally addressed these longstanding racial issues in the hiring process for the good. So again, now he's saying what I've been saying is that process was put in place to improve hires around diversity and numbers.
Well, Bones 1999 makes a great comment here. If I was the CEO of Candidate Assessment Division, I would know the state hiring requirements like the back of my hand. Absolutely. So the question is this, and this is the question I have. Anytime that you make a change within law enforcement, usually you have to have an explanation and articulate why there's a deviation, right? Particularly with the disciplinary matrix. It's written in the doctrine. If you deviate from the presumptive penalty, which is an automatic penalty, and someone gets a mitigating factor, which means that they've gotten the benefit of the doubt, there has to be an explanation with that if you deviate from the penalty. And I would assume the same thing would be with the Candidate Assessment Division. What is the accountability on behalf of Terrell Anderson and this executive board, other than pressing a button and just giving the okay and just giving a nod? Does Terrell Anderson have to put in the case file an explanation of why this particular candidate received an override and is allowed to go through with the process? So, is it just a click? If it's just a click of the button, that's an even bigger problem because it doesn't allow for us to determine why this person received an override. Is there some type of point system, right, on the psychological? Excuse me. This particularly, from what we've heard, right, credible sources, is that this was based, all of them, is based on psychological and also what was in the paper. So if that's the case, is there some type of point system? Hey, maybe, for instance, rhetorically speaking, maybe you need 10 points from the psychological to get past the process. And let's say someone received 7 out of 10 points. Would Terrell Anderson have to articulate the other 3 points of why they got the override? So these are a lot of questions that we have not heard about it. That I don't know. I would think that he would have to put somewhere in that case, just as Internal Affairs, when they're doing their cases, they have to document, just as you were doing, Marlon, in your enterprise case management system. You document your case in your case folder. I would assume that there should be something in the case, like a point system, of why this person received an override. If not, that's even a bigger problem. Now, I agree with Patrick Gordon. Is there a problem with the process? Yes. There are some real whack jobs in that psychological. Absolutely. But that's where we need the police department to fix it. But he's actually alluding to what we've been saying, that the people that are getting the override are those in the DEI movement. And we're not just saying black. We're talking about gender, sexual orientation. We're talking about people that are meek, timid, and docile. I promise you, I'm telling you right now, if you're an alpha male or alpha female and you're white, good luck getting a job at the NYPD. Good. I'm sure there's friends and listeners on this chat right now, friends on the podcast. If you have a relative that's an alpha white male or alpha white female that should have gotten the job and didn't, please put on the chat, because I'm sure. And I would love to see, I would love to see the candidates that were completely denied and did not receive an override. And I asked Ron Lason a question, and I think this is important. When Terrell Anderson looks at the case, does he get to see the ethnicity or the picture of the candidate before he disclosed the information? And the answer is yes. He can go in that case and see the picture of the candidate. So I would put my money that DEI does play a major role in this factor. And John and I proved it. How do we prove it, John? If you go back, please watch the episode where John and I did a watch party of Tanya Meisenholder when she did a podcast and she spoke about changing the nomenclature of the job. And the proof is right there. And she talked about how they have to target a specific type and they're not getting the job and they have to find a way to get them on the job. There's a complete nexus right there.
Yeah, and she literally said that they were changing the hiring practice and the psychological test to meet the standards that they wanted. Her goal was to get the job to be 30% women by 2030 or more. You know, so like it's arbitrary and it could be weaponized and utilized wrong depending on the administration, right? You get a couple of white guys in, they could abuse it against black and brown people. You get a guy that doesn't like women, they could abuse it against women. And that's what we're saying is the process is wrong. It should have never been put in place. Ron's saying that he didn't have the authority to override. So what are you saying? He went rogue and he got these people hired? Like, but I don't understand. Like, if he didn't have the authority, how are these people on the job? What are we blaming him for then? He obviously had the authority, dude. Right? He obviously was given that authority. And 100%, if the chief of department calls you, that is a lawful order. He's your boss. You work for him. It's a lawful order.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Ron might be alluding to that there might be somebody else working with him, and that whatever he was doing is, he wasn't alone in it. You know, either he wasn't alone or he had tacit approval from above to do it. That he can do this and not get in trouble. So maybe I think that's what Ron might be trying to say here. But I think Patrick Gordon's statement is again, they don't want you looking deeper than the surface level issue here. And I think that's again, he's running cover for, because let's look at who he's associated with, you know, that same clique, the same Madry, the same Chell, the same Adams clique. So I think he's just doing his part to, not get you to look any further, you know?
Yeah, I think if Terrell's given the capability of doing something like clicking that box and somebody asks him up above to change it or let's, look at my candidate, then yeah, he's allowed to do it. I mean, does he have the authority to do it? I know Ron's saying he doesn't, but he has the capability of doing it. So if he's capable, then why is he allowed to do it? Right? I was like, why do you give me? You can't give me a like a cookie and say, here, don't eat it, and then I eat it. And he said, well, why'd you give me the cook? Why'd you put the thing on my plate if I can't use it? So it was put in place to do that, and I don't know if it necessarily violates a criminal procedure law or anything like that, or a penal law, but somebody in that process, right? Whether it was the sergeant that sees all these cases being overturned by Terrell, or the next person up that gets the case and even sees an explanation, there's something there that somebody says, hey, this is not right. And I gotta report it, or something's got to come out, or a whistle blow to the paper or something, so that it comes out. So there's something that administratively wasn't done right. And although he had maybe not the authority to do it, he had the capability of doing it. So it was still not the right thing to do, right? It should have been. If you have a recruitment problem, deal with the recruitment problem. Don't adjust things to make don't adjust it so that you can get the candidate that you want. So, here Ron says here, right? So
he says he has he had the access to chain NODs, not the authority. Why does he have the access if he doesn't have the authority? If you're giving him access, you gave him the authority.
You know what's interesting about this whole thing? And everything we've been saying about this administration is spot on. What's the common denominator in this entire administration of every failure? What is the common denominator? Eric Adams, Philip Banks, Tiny Kinsella, John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, Ed Caban, Tim Pearson, and there's others. That's the common denominator. That's what we're saying. Every failure, this overtime failure, there's your common denominator. This failure with the psychological test, there's another failure. There's your common denominator. And again, this cancer needs to be removed. This administration needs to go. Don't get me wrong. I just want to say extreme gratitude on behalf of the finest Unfiltered family. I'd like to thank the fuck up of this administration because the podcast is great. We got a lot of content. I'd like to thank you very much. I appreciate it. So you know what? If we get 4 more years of Eric Adams, we got a lot of content. So for that, I have a lot of gratitude.
So let me ask you, Ron. He says access is not authority. I'm just going to give you this, John. I'm just going to give you this. So I totally disagree with that statement. You gave him access for a reason because you gave him the authority. So if you're saying he went around and he went through the system and he went rogue, I don't believe that for 1 second. But let me ask you, is this an authority that you agree with and you think that people should have? I mean, because I don't. I think this should be removed immediately. I think that if we're going to need a process for any Rover eyes, it should go all the way up to the top to Jessica Tisch. And now here we are. They're asking these guys to resign. Some of them have made arrests. And by the way, why just them? Because it's not just those 37. There's hundreds. There's hundreds of people that this happened for. So why just them? Why are we asking them to resign now? Numerous lawsuits for the NYPD on their behalf, unlawful termination practice, because like how they terminated Marlon Bethel without due process. These officers have not been charged with anything. They didn't do anything wrong other than apply for the job. Not whatever happened behind the scenes isn't on them, right? So now you have those lawsuits you have to deal with. Now they arrested people. They testified in court. They wrote summonses to people. They put their hands on people. They responded to 911 incidents and assaulted people. Not assaulted people, but now whoever they put their hands on, people are going to say, this guy was crazy and shouldn't have had a badge and a gun. Jessica Tisch just told me that. So he beat me up. He didn't have any authority. He was nuts. This guy was crazy. All those criminal cases get thrown out and you open up the city to hundreds of millions of dollars in litigation. What do you guys think about this? You're the PC. You walk into this shit show. That's the Eric Adams administration. And you get handed this debacle. Do you tell these people to resign? I don't. I'm like, we monitor them heavily and we'll see. But I'm not telling these people to resign. I'm not having this battle. I'm not going through this. They were pushed ahead like the hundreds were pushed ahead before this. We're stopping doing this right now. We're going to reinstitute the run right now. We're going to reinstitute strict standards when it comes around a criminal background right now. I don't give a crap about getting 30% women. I don't care about who's black, who's brown, who's Hindu, who's Muslim, who's Italian, who's white. I don't care. I just want the people that are qualified. And by doing that, we'll get an organic, diverse group of people that'll look like the makeup of this city, because that's what the NYPD traditionally always has done before all this nonsense started.
I would absolutely not tell these people to resign. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. We have to scale so much back. The bigger picture, if we actually make these people resign, first of all, it's completely wrong. It's not their fault. You gave them their job. And if there are some psych issues, the bottom line is they're out there right now, and apparently they're doing their job, and they're doing a good job, because I haven't heard any issues or any scandals come out of these 70 cops. So they're out there writing summonses. They're out there making arrests. They're on the streets of New York City. They're already wearing the uniform. Sorry, it's too late. You made a mistake. But if we were to retract and resign, we're talking about this could cost the city billions of dollars. The summonses, forget about the summonses, but the bad guys that were arrested, those cases are tainted. Those cases are tainted. And you're going to destroy their lives because of your mistake. You made the mistake, own it. One thing I learned great about Jocko Willink and his book, Extreme Ownership, you made a mistake in leadership, own it. And they have to own it.
Listen, their lives are already ruined, though. Here's the thing. If they get terminated, if I wouldn't do that. If I was a police commissioner, they would not be terminated. But if they were terminated or she terminates them, where are they going to go? Why'd you leave the NYPD? Oh, because they said I had psychological issues, or I had bad history that I didn't report. I lied or whatever. Where are they going to? That's worse than 50A right now. So there's no way for them to go. Now, if they stay on the job, everybody knows who they are. Everybody knows their names. What's going to happen? They take promotion tests, and that's the sergeant that failed the psych test. That's the sergeant that lied on his application. I mean, I totally agree. Don't fire them. It's the job's fault for bringing them on. It was not their fault. Whether they got a notice of disqualification or not, somebody from the candidate assessment unit called them up and said, "Hey, report tomorrow for the mini medical. You're going in the next class." And they were like, maybe I got a letter of disqualification. Don't worry about it. You've been approved. All right. If that's what you're telling me, that's what I'm doing. And I'm coming on the job. So no fault of theirs at all. And now their reputation is completely tarnished, whether they stay within the job or outside the job. They are completely ruined. If they wanted to keep these people on the job, I mean, they're going to fire them, in my opinion. I don't care what any injunction from the court or whatever, they're going to get fired. But if they wanted to have kept them on the job, they should have kept it quiet, kept it in-house, and just, like John just said, revamp the system and correct it, because that's the problem. It's not their problem. It's the system's problem, the system that the NYPD put in place and used or abused, whatever the case. It's an internal problem.
Yeah, and but sorry, Marlon, sorry to cut you off, but why are we just blaming them? Like I said, there's hundreds before them. And Samara Cohen, I agree with you. She said, John, you're lowering the standards. If this were medical school, law school, you didn't pass, you wouldn't be allowed to practice. I get it. But that's what the NYPD did. And that's why the NYPD, the NYPD Police Academy is now being looked at as you went to security guard school. And you can't go transfer to other police departments. And they look at the NYPD like a joke. This has been what's been put in place. So I don't understand why we're defending the system and why we're throwing the blame on Terrell Anderson. This was the system that was put in place, but we don't want to revamp it. The system's fine. He abused it. And who's to say he abused it? That's you arbitrarily saying he abused it. I don't see how you could say that. What do you mean? So anyone else that used it didn't abuse it? So those guys, the other guys that we overrode the psych for, that was fine. Like I don't understand. The logic. There is no logic to me in it. There's absolutely no logic to me whatsoever. Like I'm flabbergasted. Honestly, I'm flabbergasted by let's blame them.
This is where I have a problem with it, right? I don't get it. In a sense, Terrell Anderson had the authority. I think we're playing semantics when we talk about access and authority. If you have access, you have authority. It's almost like if I take my kid to a toy store, I go, hey, listen, go ahead, go touch every toy, but you can't take it home. Are you kidding me? Or take it to a candy store. Go ahead, go look at the candy, but you can't actually have any. This is absolutely ridiculous. We gave him access. He's allowed to touch it. He's allowed to look at it. This is complete semantics. So he has authority. Which ones does he have authority over? Which ones does he not have authority? Is there a certain number? If he would have made an override.
Sorry, but Ron's saying that there are not hundreds before them. What's the number then, Ron? What's the number? And while you're at it, get us the makeup of what they are, their ethnicity and their gender too at that time of the overrides. Get us the number. I'm saying there's hundreds. I'm willing to bet money. Polymark will be on my side, not yours.
But here's my point also. Like, what is the number? If Jessica Tisch said, listen, Terrell, we need a class of 2,000 in 2 months right now. What if Terrell did an override for 2,000 candidates? What's the problem? He has the authority to do it. That's what I'm saying. Is there a number? Hey, if after 75, it's too many. Like, what's the number? He has the authority. That's my point. I don't get it. Technically,
one's okay, but 30. Well, he did 70, but we're only going to tell 37 to resign. But one's good though. If he just did 1 or 2 or 5, no, it's okay.
Right, because 30. What this comes down to, so the ones that were for Caban Madry, Pearson, and Shell, those were okay. The other ones weren't okay. What's the number? Because honestly, if you really think about it, if you peel this back, technically Terrell didn't do anything wrong. You gave the authority to do it. No one said what's the number he can do or who he can override. He has the authority. Here you go. I'm going to put 2,000. You want 2,000? Yeah, here's 2,000. I don't get it, honestly. And then we're going to put the blame. Rob, you're 100% right. Spot on. We're going to put the blame on the kid, 21-year-old kid who gets notified he's got the job. Okay. You said I got the job. Okay. Thank you. I'll report. I'll take the job. They're supposed to know they got disqualified. I don't buy that.
I'm sorry. The emotions are high. Just real quick story before you go, Marlon. I'm sorry. I like this thing. I've been talking about this for 2 days. So I'm like, ah. But real quick story. I worked with a guy. The NYPD just lowered standards again, by the way. They said that if you're 20 and a half, you could come on the job now. So 20 and a half, you could become an NYPD police officer, right? So they're continuing down the path of lowering standards, right? So I worked with a guy, came out of a year before us. I think he came out with you, Eric. I think he came out with you, or he might have had a little bit more time than you. He was 20 and a half. He gets notified to go to the police academy. He goes through the police academy. While he's in the academy, he gets sent to go down to personnel, and they tell him to resign. So he's like, bro, they're telling me to resign. So he tells a senior cop, the delegate, and the guy's like, his instructor, whoever he told, and he's like, don't you dare resign. Let them terminate you. Anyway, he's still on the job today. Because they messed up. They took him at 20 and a half years old. Like they should have waited till he was 21, but he didn't resign. Sorry, Marlon.
No worries. I was gonna say I would not have done this if I was the PC, because now they open up a can of worms that it's gonna be a big problem for them. It's gonna be a big problem because, I agree that this has probably been done in the past. It's probably not been done to this extent, but I'm sure it has. And the fact that they open up the can of worms now means that people might actually be digging at what happened in the past too, right? The best way of them going about this was they should have put those people on some sort of monitoring, right? And then get rid of those people who, let's say, might have deliberately lied or deliberately tried to obfuscate their background in the candidate assessment process, right? Those people you could get rid of, okay? But for those people who you overrode psych evaluations and let them in, you open up a can of worms here, and it's now going to be a big problem for the job. And again, this is part of a continuing pattern of reactionary decisions from I suspect from Tish. And I've heard before that she's making these reactionary decisions, and then the bosses and chiefs are coming to her and be like, I don't think we should do this. And then she goes back around and corrects it. And I said before that it appears that she has some sort of Napoleon complex or Napoleonita complex, maybe, that she has to be over a little bit, has to exert her influence because she feels that she's already coming into a administration that has a clique that's actually running the job behind the scenes, and because she was never uniform, she has to kind of like throw a weight around, and throwing a weight around involves reactionary policies like this, right? So again, I think this happened, but not to this extent. I think it happens to this extent because Anderson was connected to that same clique.
Hey, in the past, right, when I came on, back in the late 80s, everything was handwritten. So there may have not been an electronic trail, right? So maybe it was just a phone call back to the site and say, hey, change that because we want this guy on. So yeah, now why did we get caught now? Because there's an electronic, a fingerprint to everything. And now you can't hide that. But if you could easily have thrown a piece of paper, Kash failed the psych. Oh, no, he didn't. Send him over to that psychologist, and guess what? Kash just passed. And that easily could have happened, right? Because that's a paper trail. Paper's easy to get rid of. Electronic, fingerprint. No, you have to work on getting rid of that. And Terrell didn't get rid of it. He just pressed the button for it.
And by the way, since there's an electronic fingerprint, the fact that the PBA is saying it's a rogue inspector, are you telling us, PBA, that you know the results of that investigation? Or
very telling.
What are you telling us here? Your statement that he's a rogue inspector just doesn't make sense.
It's actually, Terrell Anderson, you should notify your lawyer to be going after the PBA for the slander. So
I just want to say this, honestly. I see a lot of haters on the chat today. And I got to say this, I love my haters, by the way. I love our haters. I love that you're here watching the show. Thank you so much. One thing I learned from David Goggins, and remember this, to our haters, no one hates on you that's doing better than you. So for those that are hating on us, I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Thank you. But someone even said I got moves. It's pretty funny.
Sonny's been hating on me all week. I guess it's John's turn now.
I love the haters. Listen, when eventually we have a meet and greet, I hope the haters are there because I look forward to meeting you. But Marlon, I got to push back on this, and I love you, brother. But you said, and I listen to what you said. You said what they should do. Tarasco says, Eric, put a bra on. But what you said we should do is monitor them. To me, now it sounds like these 70 police officers that got hired and they met the qualifications because Terrell Anderson pressed the button. He used his authority. They got the job. They now have a target on their back. I feel if they're monitored.
I actually said that.
What's that?
I said they should monitor them. I'm on them.
No, Marlon just said it too.
I said it too.
Oh, you said it too? Oh, all right.
Yeah. I didn't know. I don't agree with that because I think that they have a target on their back now. They gave them the job. It's a fair level playing field. I'm sorry. If that's the case, then they have a complete target on their back, and I think that's unfair.
Yeah, but monitor is different than target. I'm not targeting them. I'm monitoring them. They have a potential for something to happen. Listen, I told you, I was in IAB. I was definitely being monitored. I was drug tested 7 times randomly in 1 year.
Fair? Is that fair?
It's not. No. It's not, but at the other end of it, there is a risk management portion to all of your hires. And, hey, listen, we messed up in this. These people might have serious psychological issues. I want to make sure that this guy doesn't kill himself or somebody else. Like, I don't think that's not fair to monitor, to pay attention and to track. We're tracking them anyway. We're tracking your entire career anyway. I'm putting a little asterisk next to your name. You were hired on.
How do you monitor them differently than you monitor a different police officer? You hired them. They received the same training. Terrell Anderson had the authority. It goes back to everything we said. Terrell Anderson pressed that button. He had the authority to give them the job.
He didn't have the authority. He just had the access. He didn't have the
Rob, where are you? I'm going to look up the definition for access and authority right now.
Well, if I may, I think the reason why they don't want you talking more about this is because then you're going to look at the system and you're going to realize the entire system is wrong. And they don't want you to look at the system because the system is beneficial to them, especially if they want to change the demographics of the department, like Tanya Meisenholder's whole 30 for 30 initiative, by the way, or if they want to allow certain contracts in. That system, they need that system in place so they could do all that. So they don't want you talking about the system now because then we change the system. We change the rules and have more transparency. And that's what they don't want. So
I think that the department also, they'll look to fire this guy and hang Terrell because they're looking at, I know there's currently a small amount of liability, right? On how much that individual touched or did anything to make an arrest or a summons. But going forward, does that liability continue for everything that individual does? And can the department then be sued? Because the department wants to make sure that they can say, well, we terminated this guy because he shouldn't have been qualified. So I think there's also that self-preservation that the department always has, that, hey, let's put this out there. Let's get rid of the problem. And then we look like the heroes that we saw a problem and we corrected it. And what they're basically doing is they're ruining 30 or 70 guys, and they don't care. That's it. They're going to say we changed it, we fixed it, and we'll take the small hit now rather than the hit later on. Because what happens if later on down the road this comes to light and they says, well, this guy never passed the psych. He had bad information on his application where he said he lied and everything else. Then it becomes a liability. I mean, technically now, do you think any of these guys could ever even testify in a court? Anybody that said they lied on how they lost their job or anywhere else? I mean, they're sunk. They're really sunk. And I think the department maybe sees that and says, you know what? Let's take the $1 million and give it to everybody, every victim that they've touched, and then we're done with it. We've washed our hands. But the system needs to be revamped, and they are putting their foot on the head of Terrell, and they're putting their foot on the poor head of every one of those cops that was hired.
Yeah, and let's just play pretend and that this wasn't the reason that he was given the access, and he went around, and these were the only 70 that ever made it and through the police department. Why are we only choosing 37?
Here's the other question I have. When you talk about monitor these cops, put an asterisk next to their name. When does that asterisk come off? Does that asterisk now hold them back? What if one of those cops is doing so great out there and that cop puts in for a unit? Does he or she not get that unit because they have that asterisk next to their name? Does this now hold them back in their careers? I'm sorry, the NYPD messed up. They have to own it.
Yeah, no, I don't think you could do that. You could keep an asterisk on them forever. I just think certainly you have to, I think certainly they have to be looked at least up until probation is over, But I think the bigger issue is those people who lied and it was missed, or Terrell overrode those because they're a contract or something. Those people you have to get rid of, because that's different from somebody. The psych exam they're crackpots in medical division. Okay, so the psych exam is one thing, but deliberately lying or deliberately obfuscating your record to become the cop is different. It's completely different than failing the psych and that being pushed through.
So ultimately, when we look at this, right? Ultimately, when we look at this, we have to look at this as professionals and in a mature fashion. Say, what is the best outcome? Like, what are you laughing about? The guy making fun of your hat? I love the haters today. The haters are great. You know what? It's funny we're talking about psychology because I read a lot of psychology books. So I just want to let the people know when you make fun of somebody, what they're wearing, that actually means you like them. So John, that actually means they have an affinity and they're jealous of you. So that's pretty funny. Honestly, but what's like the best? What's the best outcome here? What's the best? We have to think. What's the big picture? What's the best thing for the city? What's the best thing for the police department? What's the best thing for morale? What's the best thing for cost? What's the more intelligent approach? If you terminate them, this is going to be so litigious. This litigation will go on for years. It's going to cost the city billions. And we have to tip the scales here. What is the best outcome?
The best outcome, I guess the NYPD thinks the best outcome is let's keep utilizing the system, throw Terrell under the bus, terminate these 37 people. And that's it. And then we'll just say, they were NODs and the other ones were NDOs, and Terrell Anderson went rogue. That appears what it is. I mean, I think we all said the same thing, that the best scenario is that they revamp the system immediately, but there's no calls for that. The calls are like, oh, no. Terrell Anderson went rogue. Listen, we're going to give you this. We're going to give you this access, but don't ever use it. I don't know, man. I built systems within the police department. There were people, they had access levels dependent upon their authority, and they were able to do things like you weren't a detective able to sign off on case notes without having the authority to sign off on case notes or case updates or whatever, and like that, those systems are built for that purpose. And when you're given your access level, it's based upon your authority. So again, It's conjecture, and I don't care NDO, NOD. It doesn't matter to me. I don't have to understand it. I understand what happened and what took place and why it took place. The department's been telling us for a decade their mission in hiring, their mission and standards, what they're looking to do, and this is the result of that. This is what it is. It's not a rogue inspector. It's a rogue agency. It's an arbitrary and capricious process to get into the NYPD that's been weaponized to meet diversity standards. I mean, anyone that wants to debate that, I'm fully aware and I'm fully open to debate it at any point. That's what's been going on. I'm going to bring a lot of video evidence if anybody wants to debate me, and I'm going to bring a lot of notes directly from the police department that I've gotten in my trainings that told me that the ultimate goal was diversity. That's why we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion division in the NYPD. And again, I'll bring in a lot of the points that Tanya Meisenholder made and how they were looking to hire more minority candidates. And what she said was they were going to lower standards and utilizing the psych. And that's exactly what they did. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. This isn't a rogue inspector. It's a broken system. And the only way to go forward is to fix the system. But they're not going to. They're just going to scapegoat somebody.
Yep. There's an agenda here. The agenda is more important. The agenda is the system, and they don't want to fix the system because if you fix the system, the agenda can't go forward. This is the same way that, look, they have a problem filling academy seats, but they could easily, bring back all the cops that were forced to leave. They could easily do that, but they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. And that's the elephant in the room that we talked about with the billionaire with the Caribbean island. We talked about the elephant in the room there, and there's an elephant in the room here. And whenever people don't want to deal with the elephant in the room or talk about it, that's when I get raised up about what the real issue is and what's going on here.
And John, I totally agree with you. There's access limits, right? So you talk about the performance evaluations and stuff when I used to do them, right? After somebody did an evaluation and they sent it to me, and if I had to send it to my boss, I couldn't just sign off on my bosses and say, hey, I signed off for you, because you had to sign in, right? You had to use your code. So if there's a system where you don't have to sign off on anything, then the system is broke. And I understand what Ron's saying. These people got notices of disqualification. So what Ron was saying is they actually got a certified letter at home and said they were disqualified. But then somebody overrides that and says, now you're qualified. And somebody calls them and says, welcome to the NYPD. So, there's a problem.
Listen, I think my argument still stands. What's the difference if it's 70 or 2,000? He was given the authority to override. So technically, he did nothing wrong. He has authority. You want to tell me he has access to, someone who's completely disqualified, or they have 30 days before they're actually completely disqualified? These are complete semantics. He either has access and authority, or he doesn't. Why would he have access to look at it if he doesn't have the authority to make a decision on it? But apparently he does have the authority because he was able to put the button and get the override. So he did have the authority. Then why don't we restrict him? There's plenty of things on this job where you're restricted and you don't have access or authority. So why would we give him access to look at it? The whole thing doesn't make sense to me. But I really think my argument still stands. What's the difference between 70, or if they need a class of 2,000, you just say, here you go. Here's 2,000. He has the authority to do it. Why do we even have this 4-step process? Why don't we just have the commanding officer find 2,000 people and select them? This whole thing is ridiculous. It's not even arbitrary, because this was actually directed. I'm sure you got the phone calls. 5 girlfriends, here you go. Command call, hook up these 5 people. We know exactly what happened. And there was definitely DEI in that, because Patrick Gordon said it. Tanya Meisenholder said it. We have the evidence here. Now, Ron, you're finest Unfiltered family. I love you, brother. And I understand you're defending the candidate assessment division because you're the, partly a founder and created to this authority level in candidate assessment. But it's no reflection upon you. There's a complete pinnacle movement from 2018 to now 2025, the job changed completely. I mean, you can look at the whole entire nomenclature. It's no reflection upon you, but it's a broken system. Why can't we just admit this is a complete failure, and we need to just strip it away and go back to the beginning and build a foundation that actually makes sense? I don't agree that giving one man the authority to make the decision after this basically what we're saying is 4 groups at 100%. We need 25% of a character assessment, 25% psychological, 25% medical, 25% for your physical, but then one person can just completely override a process that takes months. It doesn't make sense to me, honestly. Just doesn't.
And then Ron says, John, do you really think that even if all 70 are DE hires, that makes any statistical difference in the 1,000 hired? That argument doesn't pass the sniff test. I have no idea what you're talking about, dude. So I'm gonna. This is what I said that thing was put in place for. I get it. You put it in place. You want to defend it, and I understand totally. But in my opinion, and I'm never gonna back off of this opinion. In my opinion, that authority for the CEO of the candidate assessment division to override these people who were disqualified, right, for psychological reasons or criminal reasons or whatever those reasons are, that authority was given to meet the department's diversity goals and to also meet their hiring goals. That authority is arbitrary, right? Because it could be used wrongly depending who it is. You got a white guy and he's disqualifying black people. You got a black guy and he's disqualifying white people. You got a woman and she's saying, I don't want any men. It could be used arbitrarily. What I'm saying is that authority should never have been given to anyone, and it should be immediately removed unless it's going to go through the highest levels. And the NYPD is going to stand behind that decision, because if at the end of the day, Terrell Anderson was the final arbiter of his truth and saying, no, we need to be able to make the final decision, not the psychologist, then exactly what Eric said is 100% accurate. What is the difference if it's 1 or 5,000? And by the way, if they could have got 5,000, they would have. They just don't get that many candidates.
Yeah. So does candidate assessment have? I wonder if they have an ICO over there. I didn't get a chance to ask Ron, but you got to wonder if there's an ICO over there. Yeah, shouldn't there be an ICO looking at for stuff like this, anomalies? Yeah.
Hey, listen, ESU, right? So we have a physical, mechanical test, and an interview. And if they fail any part of that, with the mechanical will greatly depreciate their ability to get on the job, get into ESU. Physical, they're out. If they fail the interview, they're out. So what we should have done, I guess, was, you want to come to ESU? Yes. Okay, sit over in that corner. You just passed all three parts of the test, and you don't have to take any of them. Because that's what it seems to be. Like, if you're just going to give somebody the authority to say, you don't need to pass anything and I'm going to override it, then that's okay. So it just shows that it's like you said, John, it's arbitrary. You can't do that. It's if you put things in place and you have to pass those hurdles, then you have to pass them. And if you don't, nobody should have the authority to override it. Okay, just even coming on the job. If somebody's too short and too small and they can't get over the wall, what happens? We don't pick them up. What's next? Are we going to pass them too? No, just go. You know what? Go around the wall, because it's only this big. You can go right around it. Oh, okay. Or go under it. I mean, what's next?
That's what they've been doing, by the way. They've also been doing that.
Yeah.
They lift them up.
By the way, I had a great time. I'll never forget. It was about a year before I retired. One night we were working and we had to go to the police academy. I forgot we had to pick something up. So we happened to be all in uniform. Actually, yeah, anti-crime was already disbanded. So just for fun, me and all the guys, we went jumping the wall, and then we did the JST in uniform. And it was pretty funny because some of the guys couldn't make the wall. We had a good time. The couple of instructors at the academy, they came out, they were laughing. Like, you guys really doing this? We had a great time. It was hysterical.
And yeah, no, dude, it's so true. It's so, and then like how many people did fail the psych and sue and win and come on the job? A lot. So it's not a perfect science. So like, you know, and
No.
Selly brings up a great point here. She says the problem is corruption. When people in the high ranks are giving others orders to break rules for certain people, nobody addresses corruption in the hiring process and even afterwards with promotions, etc. 100%. I agree with you 100%.
I mean, and honestly, at this point, did we lose Marlon?
I think he said, yeah, he just stepped away for a minute.
Okay, I didn't even hear it. But at this point, honestly, why do we even have a 4-step process? Spend all this money and time. I mean, I don't know what the background process is now, but I remember when I went, it was a lot of candidates, obviously. So it took months. Now I know, obviously, they're hurting, so the process is much quicker. But still, it's still man hours by the police department to vet these potential candidates and to eventually become recruits. The cost behind it is astronomical. Why do we have this entire process if the commanding officer just has the ability to do an override anyway? I mean, the whole thing seems problematic. I don't see why we can't just say, obviously, we identified. This is the problem with the police department, is they never publicly say, we identified a problem and we're going to do an analysis and strip away the process and make a process that's actually effective. Because obviously, this is not effective. And the weight of the world now, and I have to admit, though, in some ways, I feel sorry for Terrell Anderson because the weight of the world is now on him. They gave him this authority, whether it's right or wrong. They gave him the authority. Whether it's right or wrong, he received phone calls or who told him to do it, who did it. The bottom line is they gave him authority and he used it. And now the weight of the world is on him.
And the other problem is if there wasn't a complete investigation done. So if they were waiting for some background information, so if they sent something to a previous job and they're waiting for information back, whether or not that guy got terminated or he left because of drugs, and that wasn't received yet, and they already qualified that candidate, or they disqualified him and then they requalified him. That's a whole nother thing. You think about what the investigator does. He doesn't want to push that case forward, right? You want a complete case. And now he's being told, push the case through. We got to get this class in. We need this. It's a male black, a female Hispanic, a female Asian. No, we need that. We got to get the most diversified academy class ever. We got to beat our goals. And now let's push that person forward. And then you know what? All of a sudden that they're working. All of a sudden, hey, you lied on your application because you said you didn't get terminated from the job at Target, and you did. So I mean, let's do it the right way. This is you can't go and don't look at the goal. Look at the process, and then you'll get that goal. All right, you got to make it right to get to that position. You know, they're doing it backwards.
Yeah. And think of the unintended consequences of this. Are you going to get the best candidate investigators there now? Because I know I wouldn't want to be under that pressure. Not in this atmosphere. I'm not doing that. I'm not the one losing my job or going to jail for towing the line. Nope. So it's not good.
Well, I think honestly, a simple observation that I'm making an assessment on this is, if we're obviously potential candidates need an extreme background and vetting process. You're going to be awarded a firearm and a shield. You're taking an oath, extreme amount of responsibility and accountability, being a law enforcement officer. But if we're saying that we have this 4-step process, and the 4-step process is accurate to assess and to vet potential police officers, why do we need someone to have the authority to override it? Why do we need that? So what we're saying is, if we need him to override it, we're saying that the system is flawed. And that's this, to me, the most simplest assessment to this is we're admitting that it's a flawed process, because if what Ron Lason is saying, it was developed because some of the process, sometimes it's unfair why people get disqualified. So then we have a problem with the vetting process.
And just and I'm not knocking DEI hires, by the way. I'm a DEI hire. They allowed certain criminality into the background. I was able to get into the police department even with criminality in my background, right? I was pushed through really quick. I was on the job. I was in anti-crime before my investigation got completed. They were knocking on my neighbor's door. I was already off probation and in anti-crime. They were knocking on my neighbor's door to ask, "Oh, how is John?" What if he said, "Oh, that John, he deals drugs." That guy, he's using crack. He smokes crack every day. They never did the investigation until 2 years later. So it's like I mean, so like these problems have persisted for a long time. It's not like they weren't there prior. They were there. It's just it is much worse now. But that pressure to meet those classes were always there. But the difference is when I went through, there were physical standards. You would have failed. You know what I mean? But when I went through, there was thousands and thousands of guys taking that test and girls taking that test. Everybody wanted to be a cop. And now today, they can't pay people to take the test. And if they can, they can't pay them to take the job. And so and that's the problem. And all this stuff's being put in place from pressure to meet what's really there. It's a broken agency. It's a broken city. Did Eric Adams create it? No, but he made it worse. And that's it.
Yeah. I just like to point out that I was a cadet again, and they sent an investigator to knock on my neighbor's door, like when I was already in the academy as a cop, right? And I thought, wait a second, I was a cadet for a year and a half. Why don't you just go to my supervisors? My bosses were lieutenants and sergeants and a chief. Why don't you just go ask them? And so I was like, huh? And the other thing is that I think I forgot my train of thought here. Yeah, so the point is that this process is I think it's been broken for a while, and that's the system that needs to be fixed.
Think about having a neighbor you didn't like, right? So you're a cadet, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, Marlon used to beat the crap out of his wife every day, and she didn't report it, and he stole things from my backyard. What are they going to do? It's like that's where the investigation lands afterwards. You got to be kidding me. That's the job of the NYPD, to do that before and provide a good candidate. Not like, hey, we think he's okay, and let's put him in. No, we want the most solid candidates. It's a backward system right now.
Yeah, Rob, I used to work with detectives who used to leave their firearm in their drawers. They would call me and be like, "Hey, bro, can you check my notepad? I need some number on it." And I open the drawer and there's a firearm in there. And I'm like, huh? So it's a mess.
Dude, who's Sonny Mac? Because this guy he's saying that I was ordering late night beer runs and BMS. He said, "Do I remember my days at Jade East? You had the fat girl Rosie." Dude, I don't know, but you're telling everybody the places what you've done and where you've been, so we'll figure you out, John.
What is JD? Sonny Mac. Sonny Mac. I love it. Like this, is Mac supposed to be short for McCarry? You know what's crazy to me though by this whole thing? Like, I think back when I got on the job, I was like, wow, I had a college degree, I was honor grad at Officer Candidate School, I was a combat veteran, and they put me through hell. I'll never forget, I had a parking ticket. I think this is the worst thing I had on my record. I had a parking ticket, and I had to find the disposition for the parking ticket and show that I paid the fine. They put for a stupid parking ticket. Who would have known? Now you can just steamroll the job.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. Whatever. But all right, we're going 2 hours, 42 minutes. Anything else before we run? We went pretty in depth on this, and I think it's still up in the air.
So one thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if you have it, but so I don't know if it's true. Speaking of NYPD rumors, so I heard a rumor. I think it was in the 9-4 precinct that someone got transferred because they didn't do a proper greeting. What the hell is going on? Is that true?
I heard it was a kid in the 9-4. He was on the phone when somebody walked in. Inspections observed him stay on the phone while somebody walked in, like on his own personal phone. So inspections was there watching, and they issued him a CD. And the rumor says that Jessica Tisch got wind of the CD and transferred him from the 9-4 to the 7-9 because of it. What do you guys think about that? I think people make mistakes. I think the CD was enough. I don't think he needed a transfer on top of it, but it doesn't shock me considering the things I heard. Like that's the one thing that's saying that she's a totalitarian. And like Marlon's been saying, is like she's overcompensating with a lot of her stuff. And discipline's necessary, but to a point. You know what I mean? You don't got to destroy people because they made a mistake. I mean, getting a CD is a pretty big. It's costly. It's not. That's a couple $1,000s. So it's. She could have just ordered, I want you to take a day, or I want you to take 2 days or 3 days, like whatever. It didn't have to be, all right, now you're going to go on a different tour in a different precinct and all that other stuff. There could have been other ways to skin the cat,
Yeah, no, listen, I think you make a great point. I think that absolutely, if you're a police officer, you should be professional. You should greet people in your precincts. Nothing, hey, how you doing? How can I help you? You shouldn't be on the phone avoiding people, but people do make mistakes. And I think the problem, I think, Marlon, you're absolutely right. She overcompensates. And I think the problem that we see with the police department now is that the arm of the job weighs so heavily on these minor infractions, but yet we have cash for ass going on at one police plaza, and she never dropped the hammer on Jeffrey Madry. We have a chief of department that cheat on his taxes. How did she allowed him to be the chief of department? So I think our emphasis is on the wrong things. That could be just a little conversation. Hey, do me a favor, just be more professional. And I don't even think you even need a command discipline. Do me a favor, be more professional, have it addressed by the commanding officer or someone of authority in that precinct, and just drive the point home. I don't think you have to even write that down. Absolutely not. If it happens again, of course, that's something else. But that, I think, is the problem. I think the emphasis on this job is on these minor infractions, and they're trying to deflect from what's really going on. They have some deep-rooted issues that need to be taken care of before you take care of minutia.
Yeah, to me, that's White Sox bullshit right there. I mean, are you kidding me? First of all, what was he? Who was he talking to, or she talking to? Were they talking to? Were they using the department phone, looking at something? Where'd this person come in? Like, was it the guy on the telephone switchboard? Was he in the 124 room, the complaint room, and he didn't say hi? You know what? If somebody came into the precinct and I was a desk officer and my TS or my station house security didn't say hi, I would say hello to them. And the fact that inspections is in there looking for this is ridiculous. And you know what? How about, like Eric just said, hey, Rob, come here. I want to talk to you privately. Doesn't give a good perception with you on the phone right there. You let the complainant walk by. Hey, quick verbal, warn and admonish. That's it. They have craft too. Well, put it in craft. But a CD, and how the hell does a CD get all the way up to the top, to the PC, that, hey, we gave a CD out to somebody on the phone because he didn't say hello to the public. And then the PC is getting into the minutia to actually have the person transferred. I mean, we're really digging deep into the woods here. Who we helping here?
But think about this, Rob. That's the funny part, right? She knows about a command discipline, but she doesn't know about people that got on the job with psych issues, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Hey, wait, it wasn't one of the 30, was it? I gotta know.
And the other thing, right? Like the other thing, I think about how crazy it is, right? This police officer got transferred for not doing a greeting. So what happens when you give a misleading statement? You get promoted to deputy commissioner. I mean,
one more thing before we go. One more thing. I totally forgot about this, but I'm gonna forget about it over the weekend if I let it slide. So this is an idea for Kash. So I'm sorry to New York because this is coming your way. We've been making fun of him because obviously Shark Week's back. And so a good use of resources in the NYPD is to observe sharks in their natural habitat. And, if you go to any other state where there's beaches and they have beaches open, they don't have Kash shutting the beach down while you're there. What they do is if they notice a shark, they put a flag and out there to let you know that marine life's in the water, because obviously sharks live in the water, right? Obviously if it comes like real close to swimmers, they'll pull you out for a second, but they're not going to shut the beach down for the day, what's been going on in New York. But look at this use. We've been talking about AI and all this stuff. Look at what happened in LA and California. Look what they've been doing. This is Los Angeles. Look how they utilize drones. Kaz, you're behind the mic on this. I can't believe you haven't instituted this first in New York City. Let's take a listen to how LA is going to do it. And now Kaz is going to get this brilliant idea and Eric Adams on how they're going to start issuing summonses. You ready? Here we go.
But in the city of Riverside, there was another light in the night, keeping watch.
And they were able to capture, many violations.
The Riverside Police Department launched 5 drones over multiple nights looking for illegal firework activity over the holiday weekend, part of a new enforcement plan to catch those taking aim at the sky with illegal fireworks.
We're talking about the very illegal explosive mortars, the ones that are illegal in the state of California. You have to bring these from outside the state or outside the country.
Officer Ryan Railsback is the spokesperson for the department. He says it wasn't hard finding those breaking the law. Video from their drones show this man lighting one, but it set something nearby on fire. Thankfully, they got it out. But Railsback says it highlights the danger.
This is dangerous for them to do. That's why our city has taken this stance and putting a hefty fine attached to it.
The fine for those caught is $1,500. And if you were caught, the letters will be arriving in your mailbox this week.
There's no disputing what you're going to see on the video. The fireworks that were going on were affiliated with your property. It's plain as day on these videos.
So dozens of homeowners can expect to get in the mail what's called an administrative citation. It's not criminal. In fact, it is a fine against the property for using the fireworks, but there is an appeal process.
They have every right to appeal it, but we believe that every citation going out has a very strong video evidence to support it.
So far, 60 property owners have been identified to be receiving the fine, but some say it's not right.
So I think it's wrong. If you're going to cite somebody, do it person to person. That's invasion of privacy.
We're in a rightful place in the sky. It's no different than when we have our police helicopter. We have 2 brand new or newer police helicopters that go patrol. And they're looking for things to help support the officers on the ground.
Only time will tell whether the fines are a deterrent or just simply another cost of the celebration. Joy Benedict, KCAL News.
So think about that. You're away. Your neighbor shooting fireworks in front of your house. This idiot gets it wrong and sends a mail and sends the ticket to your residence saying you owe $1,500 because there's no doubt that those that those fireworks were associated with your residence, which is completely unconstitutional. It's completely trying to get you to admit to guilt that you never had. And according to our Constitution, you never have to admit to guilt. According to what? The Fifth Amendment. You don't have to admit guilt. So you're just labeling me as guilty because I own that house? What if it's my tenant? What if it's my son? What if it's somebody that was just there at my house? I have no control of them. Send your cops out there and give them a summons. That's absolute garbage.
Who thinks he got promoted after that public press conference?
Well, he's not Kaz's type. If he was a little younger, he'd probably take him to drive him.
You know what that would have done me? You know what I would have done? That would have forced me to buy a whole ton of mortars and go to every person that I didn't like and light them up in their backyard and let them all get the tickets. Right?
Right from the house.
Yeah, and what every video that we saw, he showed they were lighting them in the street. So who we giving tickets to there? It's another push for money, in my opinion.
He definitely got promoted after that. Oh, it's the same thing when we have the helicopter in the sky. Oh, shut up! Come on, that guy.
Yeah, he said
it's undeniable. No, it's deniable, bro. It's very deniable. Marlon, what do you think, bro? Come on, tell us about it.
Well, I've been talking about this. For like 2 years now. Remember those memes we used to make of Kaz with the drone over your backyard? And there are people like, "Oh, you guys are conspiracists. That could never happen here."
Chasing the guy with the pizza box.
Happening. Yeah, guess what's happening now? Now they're going to be using drones to look at your parking, look at your backyard, look at everything. And it's going to happen because those cities are in a budget crunch right now. So you know what's a good way to make money without raising taxes, which you'd have a problem. They're going to tax you on the back end by giving you summons, and the bureaucracy is going to be more efficient bureaucracy. It's still going to be a bureaucracy. It's just going to be more efficient at its job, right? So we don't look like so conspiracists no more, huh? Right?
What? Hey, so, what's next? They're going to start issuing summonses to people that walk their dogs without a leash. Oh,
oh yeah. No. Let me tell you what's coming. Right? The reason why there's a push for digital ID is because digital ID will be one all-encompassing ID. So it'll correspond to your internet access, your banking, your driver's license, your everything under one ID. And the benefit of that is when Palantir is powering the entire system, the cameras from the drone picks your face up. Oh, all your information comes up. So now if you're driving your car and you're on your cell phone, the drone, and this is already being used by a jurisdiction down south to get people driving summons for operating with a cell phone, right? The camera sees you, already identifies you, sends you the ticket in mail, right? There's no need for the cop. There's no need to pull you over. No need for anything. The ticket's coming in the mail. This is a system that's been in China for a while now, okay? And this is exactly what's coming, and it's powered by Palantir, and this is what they don't want you talking about. And this, we call this over like going on 2 years now. We called it over here.
No, you're absolutely right, Marlon. They actually do that in China. If you jaywalk in China, you get a ticket right in the mail. You're 100% right.
Yep.
It identifies you. It's
but
crazy.
think about how much worse it'll be if we get a communist as a mayor. It'll be bad.
Yeah. Yeah, Eric Adams would never do it. Like that.
I think you guys live in a communist society. So all right, let's just take a bet here. Let's predict it. All right. Eric Adams winds up, the real estate moguls wind up getting Eric Adams ahead. They gaslight all you guys enough, COVID level style. You guys beg for the tyrant who destroyed New York City and your life, the guy you were crying about for 3.5 years, and he gets you to all vote for him, and he stays the mayor and becomes the finest unfiltered man of the year in 2026 before it even starts. Let's say that happens. Does next 4th of July, Kash Daughtry implement this in the NYPD?
Yes, facts. There was, let me tell you, on the 4th of July, there was already a drone flying around in this neighborhood, and I'm at the 116. And for a fact, I was looking out the window, seeing the drone, and that could only be sure it could be a private person flying up the drone, but I have a strong suspicion that it was coming from the precinct. The 116 is a brand new facility out there. I have no doubt that it was them flying the drone.
I think Kash Daughtry is going to implement the Deputy Commissioner of Wildlife. He's going to monitor loose dogs, sharks, birds.
Remember, all these city agencies are going to have it. Sanitation has it. Parks has it. They're all going to have their drones out there. Yeah. And what's worse is wait till they're all the videos is centralized. So now as a cop, as a detective, you can. If I was on the job and I have some case where I need that video, you're gonna get it. You're gonna push to get it. So this is a minefield that we're heading into, and the civil rights. There are tons of civil rights concerns that we should all have about what's happening.
I would love to have Kash Daughtry on a Friday roundtable. I think we would laugh our asses off.
What do you think, Rob? What do you think, Rob? In May, are we going to start hearing if Eric Adams is the man of the year? Are we going to start hearing? Oh, I've invented this new great thing, and what we're going to do is go after fireworks, and let me tell you more. And then he's going to have his deputy. I actually got to get one of those hats. I'm going to get a deputy mayor, Kash Daughtry hat. Where's it? Yeah, where can I get one? Does anyone know a swag store in New York? I got it.
You're going to see, right? So because he's the deputy mayor of public safety, you're going to see it forever, right? You're going to see, like Marlon just said, oh, somebody dropped a piece of paper out on Fifth Avenue. Oh, that's a ticket. Oh, somebody did this. That's a ticket. And yeah, over the fireworks, absolutely. It's going to be all over until you know what happens. Like somebody said in the chat, till it hits one of the helicopters and one of the helicopters go down, right? So, I mean, it's all good. It's all looks great. But yeah, I think eventually Kaz is going to get one drone that's so strong that it's capable of lifting him, and he's going to fly around the city and make sure everything's safe.
Hysterical. All right, we had some other stuff, but I mean, we're about to hit 3 hours, so I think that's enough. I agree. I think we definitely see that Adams and Kaz doing the round robin. We might even get another, oh, how you doing video, from Kaz Daughtry. How you doing there? I bet you thought I was playing Call of Duty. Well, I'm not. I'm getting my drone ready for 4th of July. So.
Is that you with your loose dog? I see you.
What did you look for Macy's Thanksgiving parade or when they have fireworks for the Christmas New Year's Eve?
I want to hang out with Kaz. I think I would have some fun. Hang out.
I don't think you do. I don't think you do.
I'm gonna
unless you want to check his stamina. I know you're into checking. How was Rob's stamina today, Eric? What do you think?
I'm good. I think what's funny. Right now we're all laughing, having a good time, but I think Ron Lason's having a heart attack right now. God forbid, but I think he's saying like, "Oh my God."
Send a drone with a defibrillator to him. Send a drone right now to defibrillate to his house.
That's it.
So
whatever. That override sucks, Ron.
You think we would pass the psych test right now?
That shit is arbitrary as hell. No way. I can still pass it though. Just give me the same young girl. She was asking me questions and I was asking her questions back, and she was like, she was like, "Do you have any weird sexual preferences?" And I was like, so I just smiled. I go, "What's weird?" She's like, "Never mind." You
didn't happen to lick your finger while she said it, right?
Yeah. And then she's like, "Do you have any weird dreams?" I'm like, "No." I was like, "Do you?" but it is so. But all right, any last thoughts before we get out of here, guys?
No, listen, 3 hours and 2 minutes into it. I had a lot of fun today. Great roundtable. This chat was on fire today. Friends and listeners, friends in the chat, we really appreciate it. And the haters in the chat, we love you too. Don't stop. Keep coming. Bring all the haters. Bring all your friends. You're welcome. I love it. I love the haters. I love my friends, but the haters, you're great because I know you're watching. You don't admit it. In deep, dark places, you pretend, oh, I don't watch those guys. Meanwhile, everything that we say, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And anyone who left coffee and donuts today, I know we didn't get a chance to give you a shout out. If you did, thank you so much. Class 8311. I think Josue something. I'm sorry. Anthony DiMaggio, coffee and donuts. Thank you so much. Josue, there you go. Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate it. It's Friday. We'll be back Monday, of course. Marlon, Rob, you got anything before we leave?
No. I think Sonny had to go back on patrol. His crew was probably, all those jobs were building up, so he had to get back to the radio run. So.
The radio's going.
Listen, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Love the round table. Always happy to be here. Great topics, and like Eric always says, and John says, thank everybody in the chat and group. Thanks for your likes and follows, and everybody have a great, safe weekend. Watch out for the drones.
Give Sonny that overtime in cash, John.
I'm gonna piss Ron off. We got to read this out before we go. We got to piss Ron off one more time. Samara Cohen says, Layson is the Bongino of the podcast. Nothing to see here.
Oh, man.
I'm just glad that Layson is not my boss anymore, because he'd probably put me on a foot post right now. Listen, Friday roundtable, we'll be back Monday as always. New York's finest retired Unfiltered Podcast, 8:05 live Eastern Time, 4:05 for me in Alaska. Tuesday, Sal Greco. Of course, Wednesday, your executive perspective. And don't forget our new show, 10-4 Tavern. Those guys are doing a hell of a job. Police support, friends, listeners, haters, we love you. We'll see you soon. And Eric Adams and this administration, thank you for the content. My gratitude.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?